We do have a single-use plastic water ban for city meetings in the room here. I forgot my bottled water. This is Liquid Death can of water, so I just don't want anybody getting the wrong impression while I'm drinking it up here.
As you get happier and happier.
Yeah, right. I'm just happy to be here.
Oh, good, good.
All right, I'll call to order this regular meeting for Tuesday, January 16th of the Traverse City City Commission. All please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, we had a little distraction coming in here and we're good to go. So I'm going to now move on to our land acknowledgement. We'd like to begin our meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Thank you for the strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. And now I will turn it over to our city clerk, Benjamin Meritat, for roll call, please.
Yes, good evening and Happy New Year. Commissioner Anderson?
Present.
Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Werner?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Here.
And Mayor Shamrow?
Here. All right, we'll move right into, I'm very excited to say, announcements from our city manager. I know Liz Vogel has joined us last week officially and been in a lot of meetings, so we're all kind of used to seeing her, but this is her first official meeting as our city manager, so I wanted to welcome you and give you a chance to talk here for a minute.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome. I have been meeting with department heads and community stakeholders and leaders, and it's been a whirlwind. I just finished my 10th day, had my second staff meeting today, and I'm just really thrilled to be here, so thank you very much.
Excellent. And did you want to take a minute to introduce yourself? You want to introduce chat? That would be good.
And here to assist me in the short term as I post the assistant city manager job is an interim assistant city manager, Chet Janik. For those of you who might, the name might ring a bell, Chet recently retired as the Leelanau County Administrator. Prior to that, he was the superintendent of Charlevoix Schools. Prior to that, Buckley Schools. And he also, I think, had a little over 20 years at Northwestern Michigan College. So thank you, Chet, for helping me out over the next 90-plus days. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, we'll hand it over to Benjamin again for the city announcements. Clerk's
Sure.
announcements.
Yeah, just some meetings to announce for this week. The week of January 15th, the Arts Commission is meeting. That'll be tomorrow, Wednesday, January 17th at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room, which is on the second floor of the Governmental Center. The Planning Commission will also meet on Wednesday, January 17th. That'll be at 7 p.m. in the Commission chambers. And then the Downtown Development Authority Governance Committee will meet on Thursday, January 18th at 2 p.m. in the committee room on the second floor of the Governmental Center. And finally, with respect to meetings, the Downtown Development Authority Board will meet this Friday, January 19th at 9 a.m. in the Commission chambers. I wanted to make just some miscellaneous announcements. One is we are seeking city residents to serve on the Human Rights Commission. So anyone that lives in the city that's interested in serving on the Human Rights Commission, please reach out to my office. And then the Christmas tree drop-off site, which is at Hall Park, is open until February 2nd. And as always, we remind people to take their decorations and things off of the trees, you know, all the ornaments, tinsel, and those things so they can be recycled effectively back into nature. And then our partner, the city's partner, the Vasa Ski Club, is seeking volunteers. That's for the Junior National Qualifier race, which we're always proud to host at Hickory. And that's going to be on January 27th and 28th is when volunteers are needed. And sign up can be found at vasaskiclub.org. And then also, while we're talking about Hickory Hills, it will be opening this Friday, January 19th at 3:30 p.m. now that we have all sorts of fresh snow. And then just the seasonal reminder that we like to give to residents and businesses to keep their sidewalks please keep your sidewalks clear of snow and ice for the safety and accessibility for all. And if you've got a chance, please clear snow away from fire hydrants so when moments are precious. our fire department can do what they need to do. I mentioned that we're seeking city residents for the Human Rights Commission, but we're also seeking volunteers to help us power city government on the Board of Tax Review, Board of Zoning Appeals, Coast Guard City Committee, Historic Districts Commission, Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Traverse City and Garfield Township Recreational Authority. And as always, we encourage folks to contact my office if they're interested in any of those opportunities. And that's all that I've got.
Fantastic. Do you have a
I can pull it up.
Oh, it's okay, I've got it
Okay.
on my phone.
All right.
All right. We're doing this a little bit out of order. Our next order of business is the mayoral proclamation for the Traverse Area District Library. So I'll be joined up there with Michelle Howard. But we did it a little out of order because I already gave her the proclamation. So I will be reading off my tiny phone. So please excuse me if there's anything I miss.
Is it easier for you to read off of this? Okay.
Sort of. So thank you, Michelle, for joining us. I was able to take part in an event with you and several library board members, friends of the library, past and present, leadership from the library, and celebrate the amazing gem that we have, being our Woodmere branch and our just very strong library system. So with that, I will read. Whereas in 1869, a group of civic-minded ladies responding to the needs of a young and growing community met with the objective of establishing the first library in Traverse City, which was known as the Ladies' Library. And whereas in 1902, with a grant of $20,000 from the Andrew Carnegie Foundation to build the library on 6th Street, the Traverse City Public Library opened its doors on March 10th, 1905, with an addition added in 1966. And whereas, from the needs of their library patrons, the leadership of the Traverse City Public Library recognized a larger scope of their mission, and with the support of a vote of the people, became a district-wide library in 1983. And whereas, from these modest beginnings, the library's collections grew along with the community to the point that a new building was erected on Woodmere Avenue in 1999. And whereas, over the years, the library has offered programs for all ages, outreach services, literacy initiatives, small business resources, bookmobile services, talking book library, 3D printers, internet access, a variety of materials in ever-changing formats, and many more, many other means of community support and enrichment. And whereas, through times of recession and prosperity, war and peace, pandemic and wellness, the Traverse Area District Library has continued to serve the people of Traverse City and in the library district as a place of learning and enrichment, culture, and community. Therefore, I, Amy Shamrow, Mayor of Traverse City, City of Traverse City, do hereby proclaim January 10th, 2024 as the 25th anniversary of the main library on Woodmere Avenue. I encourage all residents to visit the library this month and for another 25 years or more to take advantage of the wonderful library resources available at the Traverse City Area District Library on Woodmere Avenue and all the libraries in the Grand Traverse County. I would extend sincere gratitude to its trustees, staff, and volunteers, past and present, for their accomplishments, commitment, and dedication to the Grand Traverse region and its residents. And as also a friend of the library board member and mayor, I'm very glad to pass this proclamation on to you and hand it over for you to speak a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We had a really lovely day last Wednesday, and our new city manager attended as a library lover, and it was a special day where the community came together and shared their memories, including someone who showed up whose grandfather actually built the Carnegie Library. But it was just a wonderful day to celebrate what we've done and look forward to what we plan to do for the next 25 years. So thank you all for your support, or more, thank you, or more. And I hope to see you at the library. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. All right, thank you for that, and thank you for Michelle Howard, also who used to sit up here with us on this side, does it all in our community, including leading our amazing library system. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Benjamin Marantet for our consent calendar.
Yes, the purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed from it and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission, and such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. Item 1, consideration of approving the minutes of the December 4, 2023 meeting of the City Commission. Approval recommended. Item 2, consideration of authorizing the release of an easement which was acquired for the construction of the Boardman Lake Loop, which is not necessary for the loop's construction. Approval recommended. Item 3, consideration of authorizing an estoppel and recognition agreement which clarifies the role of the lender in case of a default in connection with a payment in lieu of taxes or pilot arrangement for Novo TC Hall LLC. Approval recommended. Item 4, consideration of authorizing a confirming purchase order for unleaded fuel for city operational use. Approval recommended. Item 5, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for the replacement of body-worn cameras and related equipment for use by the police department. Approval recommended. Item 6, consideration of authorizing a termination of a special land use permit at 802 East State Street, which provided for a change in use from single-family dwelling to two-family dwelling with a special land use permit no longer necessary because of the change in zoning. Approval recommended. Item 7, consideration of introducing an amendment to the mobile food vending ordinance to provide that for the Grand Traverse County Civic Center, mobile food vending units do not need a license from the city clerk, provided that they are approved by the county for operation and pass the required inspection by the Traverse City Fire Department, and consideration of scheduling the amendment for possible enactment on February 5th, 2024. Introduction and schedule for possible enactment on February 5th, 2024 recommended. Item 8, consideration of adopting resolutions scheduling a petitioned for charter amendment ballot proposal as it relates to tax increment financing for the November 5th, 2024 election, which is a ministerial matter as the City Commission is obligated to adopt the resolutions. Adoption recommended. Item 9, consideration of adopting a resolution recognizing the City Opera House Heritage Association as a nonprofit organization within the city, which will allow it to apply for a state of Michigan raffle license. Adoption recommended. Item 10, consideration of adopting a resolution which authorizes an agreement to receive $28,000 in grant funds from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and commits the city to allocate $32,000 for a condition assessment, public outreach, market analysis, and preliminary conceptual improvement recommendations for the Clinch Marina. Adoption recommended. And finally, item 11, consideration of amending the resolution recognizing neighborhood associations to recognize Triangle Neighborhood. Approval recommended.
Thank you for that. Would any commissioner like to pull any items from the consent calendar? Go right ahead, Tim.
Item 8, please.
8, any others?
Item 3, and I'd like to make a comment when we get to number 10.
We can make the comment on number 10 right now, and then we'll do the other two.
Great,
Yeah.
okay. Number 10 is the proposal, the consideration of adopting the funds for preliminary conceptual improvement recommendations, as well as condition assessment, public outreach, market analysis for Clinch Park Marina. I just wanted to clarify that looking at this amount of funds and reading the proposal, it's only to cover the preliminary engineering study, correct? It does not include any funding for public outreach, market analysis, or preliminary recommendations for improvement. Is that the correct interpretation?
Yes or no? If it's more detailed than yes or no, we'll probably just pull it. If it's more detailed than yes or no, we'll just pull it. Is that a yes or no? Okay, you can come on.
Thank you. Frank Tuturi, Director of Public Services. What you're approving tonight is actually the verbiage for the state for us to accept the state's dollars. Once we get the dollars in hand, the RFP will be created, which will detail out all the pieces of the meat and bones of what will be in the engineering study. So essentially, it's looking at the use of the marina that hasn't been looked at in about 20 years.
So it's the ask to the state, though, is what we're approving.
This is you're actually supplying the resolution to the state so that we're accepting their money.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Frank. Appreciate it.
Does that satisfy that?
It
Okay. Would you
satisfies
like to
that.
pull it, Commissioner Treadwell? or
Yes,
you-
I have
okay.
a follow-up question, and
Okay.
I'd also like to pull number 2.
Okay. Any others? Any from the public that be pulled that have not already been pulled? Okay, I would take a motion to accept as amended.
I move that we accept the consent calendar as amended.
Okay.
Support.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. So we'll start with item 8 that was pulled. And this is the charter amendment for the TIF district. And Mr. Warner, you had that pulled?
Yeah, thank you. I understand that this is ministerial and that we're obligated to approve the resolution, but to me, there's a disconnect between the November 5th date for this and the likely April date that extension of the current TIF 97 will be in front of this body. And it just seems like there, at the very least, should be a discussion of any possible options out there as far as either having this item on an earlier ballot that would come before April, or delaying that April till after the results of, what would happen on November 5th. It seems like a big disconnect.
I know I have some answers to that, but I think Lauren is prepared as well.
Yeah, and one thing, if I may just jump in with respect to the election date, is that the commission doesn't have the option to put it on another election date other than the November election that's outlined in state law. So there isn't flexibility with
There's
respect to
not
that.
like opportunity for a special election or anything.
If
Not
the,
for this.
if the
no.
petitioner wants to pay for it, it can be, correct?
No, they would be required, there would have been a higher signature
Oh, okay.
requirement that would then give you that flexibility if you wanted it, but they didn't meet that signature requirement.
Okay, I guess, like where,
I think Lauren also, were
Oh,
you
if
going
you
to
have-
speak to
yeah,
this as
something,
well?
sorry.
Or-
Well, I think that answered part of the question. What part is outstanding?
they,
no, that's it then. I mean, the other part
Yeah.
would be, could the April participation by this body in deciding whether to extend TIF 97 wait till after this? And
it would-
even if it doesn't, like, to me, the public opposition to extending TIF 97 specifically will just increase if this current timeline is stuck with, because if this body approves the extension of TIF 97 in April, knowing that the November ballot has something about the possibility of public input on extending TIFs, it just strengthens the, I guess, those in the community that maybe even currently trust government, but certainly folks that don't trust government, this will just strengthen that opinion that we do what we want. That's all. It seems like people that would want TIF 97 to be extended would see that to some extent and say, hey, this is just hurting ourselves by having this vote in April as opposed to waiting till after we see what happens with this ballot resolution. I don't have an answer. It just seems counterproductive.
I guess I would also say, though, to this that we do have it as part of a process. It may or may not pass at this body. When it does, correct me if I'm wrong, but that triggers the ability to collect signatures and challenge that particular TIF.
Right, but that's,
I'm clarifying for
Yeah,
the public of
yeah.
what the process is. And so that there is both this general no TIF without renewal, but that also the specific one that would get passed would be up for a possibility of referendum as well. And Mr. Treadwell had his hand up.
Yes, I would say that if there's a question about a potential ballot referendum, clarifying the issue and whether we should proceed beforehand, I would say that as the last city charter amendment concerning building height was not settled from a legal standpoint for several years, and there are still aspects of that that could get challenged in the future. So the notion that a charter amendment has passed does not necessarily mean that there is a clear framework for the city on which to proceed. I am anticipating that if this ballot proposal does pass, that there are unresolved legal questions about what constitutes the creation of a TIF district or a change to a TIF district. But that is up to the voters to decide, and then up to stronger legal minds than my own to figure out what that means.
So, go ahead, Tim, sorry.
well, again, it just, to me, yes, I understand there's a process, and say hypothetically this body in April approves the extension of the current TIF. Again, public perception to me, that just strengthens the arguments of why people will want to sign quickly and oppose that April determination. The whole trust in government thing. I just, to me, that's what it comes down to. And to Mr. Treadwell's comments, again, we could split hairs and get into the minutia and whatnot in court after November. But again, that will just make the public, in my opinion, make the public even more opposed to TIF.
Where we are at right now, though, is this has been submitted to us for approval for the ballot in November.
Right.
We really legally, we could, but we legally cannot say this cannot go on the ballot in November, and that is the issue before us right now.
Right, and I
Where
plan to
we
vote yes.
I was going to say, where we decide to go with the further discussions of TIF is for other meetings. This issue that we are voting on right now that is on our agenda is about voting to put this on the ballot, which we have the signatures that asked us to put on the ballot, which is what we are doing. And we could say no, I guess, but that's not really legally in what we can do. We'll just end up back here doing it all over again. So if there's more on the discussion of that particular portion of this item, did you have more, Heather, on that?
No, I have more, I have one more comment in support of Commissioner Werner's comments.
Okay, and I appreciate that, but right now we are voting on whether this goes on the ballot or not. We have more TIF discussion below, so you can give that, but we can give your comments right now, but I want to make it clear to the public that what we're voting on is whether this goes on the ballot or not. So please go right ahead.
Just in support of delaying this until after the November vote, the TIF isn't done. It doesn't come up, it doesn't end until 2027. So that is, we've got some time here. And also, the DDA has lost its CEO. And this would give time for the DDA to find a CEO and get the campaign back going again.
That's an opinion on where the TIF process should be. We have before us a measure that was brought to us by signatures by the public. I really feel like that is what that we need to refocus on that right now in our discussion, because this is a referendum and our public is allowed to bring things to us for charter amendment, and we are to vote for that to go to the people to be voted on. That is what we're talking about right now. So if someone would like to make that motion, we can have that vote right now. If someone would like not to, I think our attorney can advise us what we'll be expecting next if no one wants to make that motion.
I'll make the motion that the resolution approving ballot language for the proposed initiated charter amendment and the resolution approving charter amendment language for proposed initiated charter amendment related to tax increment financing, which would schedule the proposal for the November 5th, 2024 election, be adopted.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any public comment on this item?
I'll state the rules for public comment. Please state your name and address. Indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, or a city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and we ask that all language be respectful to everyone.
Jim Crothers, 218 West 11th Street. I'm a city resident. Happy New Year and welcome Ms. Vogel to Traverse City. Thank you, Commissioner Werner, for pulling this item. I am here to support the resolution, and thank you for making the motion to support the resolution. But as Commissioner Werner is pointing out, there are further steps to deal with TIF, and it seems like there is a circling of wagons trying to push this through before the citizens have their opportunity to vote on this, whether it can go through or not. So I just want to give you a quick reminder that TIF was originally started out as a tool to help blighted communities. It was a tool to help generate revenues to redevelop our urban cores and to raise our property values. It was a tool that had a beginning date and an end date. And that's how we've been operating TIF for close to 30 years now. I was on the original Citizen Advisory Committee back in the 90s when we created the TIF program. And what we sold to the community was, give us 30 years, we'll redevelop downtown, we'll make it great, and then we will give the taxable value in the increased values of the real estate back to the city general fund. And that's the promise we made to the city to get them to support us creating a TIF district downtown. And from all idea that I'm seeing of what's happening on DDA and the City Commission right now is we're trying to rush this TIF through and get it approved when we have actively citizens out there trying to say, no, we want to go by the original plan, the 30 years that you promised us. And we've done our job, got the signatures, and we're going to ask that you give the citizens the opportunity to vote on TIF if we do extend it in November. I just hope that you don't, before that time, try to push TIF through in that time, because the citizens, there's a lot of citizens out there that were clamoring to sign this. We had volunteers out getting the signatures, got them rather quickly, so we'll do it again if we have to. But TIF was not a forever tool. It's been a good tool. We've done our job. It was for blight. We're not a blighted city anymore. We've done our job. We've increased the values of real estate. That money is supposed to come back to the general fund to help support all of the city. The DDA could ask for that money in their budgets in the future. It's not like they're losing it. So I'm just pointing that out, and I'm sure I'll be back to talk to you, but I want to thank Mr. Werner for pulling this from the agenda to start the conversation again. And we'll talk to you again about this. Thank you.
Any further public comment? Any other comment from the commission? Go ahead, Jack.
I'd just like to second what Commissioner Werner had to say. I have concerns about rushing forward with a 30-year commitment when we are just months away from having our residents have a chance to express themselves. So I support Mr. Werner.
We are not rushing forward
Hold
with
on,
anything.
excuse me. We have nothing acknowledged here, Mr. Treadwell. I think Ms. Anderson still had the floor.
That's it.
Okay, I just would bring it back to everybody to remind the public and everyone up here that we are voting on whether to put this on the ballot. There are going to be a lot more opportunities and discussions at the DDA, at the public meetings with that we're going to be voting on the ad hoc, or the body that was being created later on this very agenda, as well as city commission meetings. Putting this on the ballot is not a done deal, and putting this on the ballot doesn't mean that TIF 97 will automatically be extended. So with that in mind, are there any other comments on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. Number 3. Okay, and Jackie, I believe you had this pulled?
I did, thank you. I am still, as many of us, learning a lot about pilot agreements, and I am curious as to why Traverse City would be entering into an agreement with Innovo's lender, and I wondered if this has been done in the past with prior pilot agreements.
That's a great question. So, no, it's not been done before, and part of the reason for that is because this is under the new workforce pilot ordinance and statute. So, previous to that workforce pilot statute, the only way that a pilot would be possible was if a project was MSHDA funded. And so the funder was MSHDA. And they knew what was going on with the pilot because they were the lender and they were MSHDA and they were in charge of the whole thing, right? And now they are taken out of the picture as the lender. And so what Innovo has done is they have a pilot from the city, and they have private funding for that. They have a private lender. And so what the lender has requested is to have a recorded document that basically is consistent with the city's ordinance and speaks to, what happens if Innovo defaults on the loan? Is the lender allowed to then operate the project as required under the ordinance and the pilot and continue to get the benefit of the pilot? Yes. Under the statute and the ordinance, that is allowed. The lender wants that to be in the chain of title so that there's a document that says that. So that's one example of the things that are in the ordinance that are in this agreement, and the things that are in the agreement are all consistent with the ordinance, and it's basically the lender wanting a record of that so that they can have that comfort as they're lending to Innovo, that if something goes wrong, and hopefully everything will go right, that they can continue to have the benefit of the pilot and move forward in that way, which already is provided for in the ordinance.
So tell me if I've got this right. If Innovo is no longer in the picture, then this does not create any additional liabilities for the city.
No.
Thank you.
It doesn't.
Any other questions while we're... Okay, I would take a motion if someone wants to make it. Go ahead, Tim.
Go ahead, you got it.
I recommend that the mayor and city clerk execute the estoppel and recognition agreement with Innovo Breakwater Apartments LLC, which clarifies the role of the lender in the case of a default in connection with the payment in lieu of taxes arrangement for Innovo TC Hall LLC, with such agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Anderson and a second by Warner. Any other discussion from the commission on this item? Seeing none, any other discussion from the commission or the community on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back for a vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Good question, Jackie. And on to item number 10, which is the, as previously introduced, I guess we could say, Clinch Park Marina request for funding from the DNR. So I believe that's Ms. Vogel and Frank Deturi. But what questions did you have?
Yes, I had questions that perhaps Frank is able to answer about the scope of this project and any limitations that accepting and proceeding with this funding from both the city and the DNR would limit in the future, because I can recall a previous time when we, or a previous commission, attempted to alter the parking for Clinch Park Marina and found that there were certain strings attached to that parking lot because of previous DNR grant funding.
Okay, so would you have something direct for Mr. Deturi to answer?
Yes, if he can say like how much of the marina facility and Clinch Park around it is covered and the extent to which it limits any recommendations and engineering work done through this to strictly marina purposes.
Because we don't have the RFP developed yet, nor the scope, essentially it's to take the marina property as a whole, as its enterprise fund, and look into a configuration that suits its use now, the public's use, and wise engineering layout of what's there. Details, we're really not at a detailed point yet. We're basically just, we got the funds so that now we can go out and hire a consultant to help us find our way.
Okay,
Does that
so
help?
in future use, if parking at Clinch Park became an issue again, this wouldn't limit us to saying, hey, that can only be used for marina purposes.
No, I think if I was to guess on how that might wind up, or a certain scenario would be parking configuration was this, now it's that, or now we recommend that, and then since
Okay.
we recommend that, there'll be decisions made whether or not we wind up with that.
Thank
And
you.
Lauren put her hand up if she wanted to contribute to that
But in
answer.
further answer of that question, the original grants that we had to build the marina originally are in perpetuity. So, I mean, we're going to be dealing with that. So,
Okay,
One of those tricky legal words.
yes. And Jackie, I know you had questions. Did you have further ones on this?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
We'd take a motion.
Yes, I move that the resolution authorizing acceptance of $28,000 in funding from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources for a condition assessment, public outreach, and market analysis, as well as preliminary recommendations for improvements to the Duncan L. Clinch Marina, and authorizes the execution of the related agreement, which articulates that the city will provide $32,000 in grant funding to be covered by the Duncan L. Clinch Marina Fund, and further that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute such agreement, with the agreement subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Support.
Okay, Commissioner Treadwell, motion, and second by Warner. Any other discussions from the commission on this? Any questions or comments from the public on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to item number 2. Sorry, I wrote it in a way I thought it was 12 for a second. So that'll be the release of the Boardman Trail easement, and Mr. Treadwell, did you pull this one?
Yes, I figure it's too late in the process now, but I'm more asking for the future. This is a case where we obtained an easement that then turned out not to be necessary for the project, because we built, in this case, the trail on a boardwalk over the lake itself. However, now we have a lot of people using that trail and appreciating the forested hillside that this easement runs on. And I'm wondering if there, like I said, I suppose it's too late in the process now, but in the future, we can look at, in a similar situation, handing that easement that we obtained over to, say, the Conservation District or another entity that would allow it to be protected in a different way.
Ms. Tribble.
It's tricky because this easement is specifically for non-motorized recreational trail purposes. So to hand it off to somebody else for those same purposes may or may not be useful. But this is where, just for the public's benefit, instead of going all the way around the edge of Boardman Lake with the trail, you'll know that there's the boardwalk that goes cuts across the cove. And so those easements on the edge of the water there are no longer necessary. So I don't know if it would be useful to give somebody else a trail easement where a trail isn't going to really be built. And you can't switch. So just legally speaking, an easement is only good for the purposes that are defined in the easement. So you can't say, we have this trail easement, let's use it for a beach now. You can't do it that way. So,
Thank you.
just to be clear.
Good clarification point there. Any other questions about this or a motion? Or no motion?
I move that the mayor and city clerk execute the termination and release of easement included with the packet materials for the January 16, 2024 meeting, subject to approval as to substance by the city manager and as to form by the city attorney.
Support.
Okay, motion from Commissioner Wilson, or Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, and second by Mr. Treadwell. Any other comment from up here? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passes, and we will move on now to our old business item of, very exciting one here, for our ladder apparatus. And I will turn that over to Ms. Vogel, and I believe Chief Tuller is here as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is an incredible grant opportunity for our fire department. And if Chief Tuller, if you wouldn't mind making a few words on this as well.
Sure, thank you, Madam City Manager. Chief Teller, Fire Chief for the City of Traverse City. This project started, I want to say it was about this time last year. Two people got together and talked about some major city projects that were having funding challenges, one of which is before you tonight. The other two being relating to the water department and replacement of lead pipe leads, and also I believe the West End Beach project was the third. And with the help of our state representative, Betsy Kofia, who's hiding in the back row back there. She's in the building, but she's back there. Anyway, so yeah, before you stands the formal acceptance of the grant that was engineered with the help of Representative Kofia to give us the funds to purchase a desperately needed ladder truck replacement for our 2004 KME ladder, which is still serviceable. It's still passing its inspections, a lot of it due to the great and hard work that our city garage staff perform every time it goes over there for help. And we have an estimated build-out time of 3 years. And with our maintenance plan in place and a couple of changes we made internally, we're pretty confident we can get to that goal line, and at 3 years then have a new unit roll into the city to service for another 15 to 20. So very happy about it. Kind of an early Christmas gift when we got the news last fall. And yeah, we're definitely, I think, maybe the envy of some of the other fire service agencies in a greater area, because how did you do that? I said, well, you got to know people. No, actually, it's just showing a need, and a lot of people with the horsepower to get things done for the greater good. So I'm very pleased and happy, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. Any further comment?
I just want to say the lead time on these types of procurements are very long. Even EMS vehicles, you're looking at over a year lead time. So it's really great that we're thinking proactively about keeping our current equipment working while we're building out the new apparatus. So thank you, Chief.
Excellent. So anybody want to be the hero to ask or to officially accept the $1.8 million request that we've got going here?
I'll make the recommendation that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute the necessary documents to officially accept the State of Michigan Program Enhancement Grant in the amount of $1,800,000. Such documents subject as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, and further, that the grant funds in the amount of $1,800,000 be accepted and placed in the garage fund.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw. So we've got a motion from Commissioner Stanley, second by Commissioner Shaw. Any other discussion up here? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, well, passes with great enthusiasm. We're looking forward to that. All right, coming up next, we have our update regarding the TART Trail extension, and I'll hand that over to you, City Manager.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to introduce the Chief Executive Officer of TART Trails, who's here tonight with our Director of Planning, Sean Winter, Julie Clark. Thank you for coming. And for those of you, the summary in your board packet has the timeline dating back to February of 2022. And during the transition, Julie reached out to me and wanted to get me caught up on some of the scope of this project, and she's really excited to be here tonight to share that with everybody. So thank you. And Sean, did you have a few words to say?
Yeah, I was just going to go ahead and introduce Julie on that, but as you know, this board,
Sorry.
so thank you for that, but Sean Winter, City Planning Director, but as this board's aware, we were before you in the summer to discuss phase one of this project in preparation for TART submission of a MEDC revitalization and placemaking grant. At that meeting, the City Commission generously committed to contributing the matching funds along with the DDA and TART to this project. There have been some changes in the scope of work of phase one that was originally proposed due to some changes and opportunities that have presented themselves since then. So Julie's going to provide an overview of that. It's all within the total scope of work that has been proposed all along, and then we'll be available to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Manager Vogel. It's really nice to see you up there, and it's good to be in front of y'all tonight. I'll be quick because I know you have a big agenda, so I'll just give you an update as to where we are. Just as a recap, or for those who are watching and aren't aware of this project, this is the TART Bayfront Reconstruction and Extension project that we're talking about tonight. It did kick off. So, Chief, I'm with you. Things take a long time sometimes to get done. We did kick off over a year ago. In between that time, we've had a lot of community engagement, so you can read up there, numerous community meetings, community sessions, walks with neighbors, conversations with stakeholders. All of that culminated in a final design that was approved by both the Park and Planning Commission as well as the City Commission in August of this year. So we were really excited to move. We are trying to keep pace with the reconstruction of the Grandview Parkway, and this allowed us to do it, and we're pretty excited about the opportunity. As Sean mentioned, TART did apply for the RAP grant, and thank you, Sean, wherever you went. It took me a while to look up what RAP meant. It does not mean what I enjoyed in high school. So, and now, to be honest. Okay, so the scope that you see before you was the scope that we applied for the RAP grant. It extended the TART Trail, which currently ends at Murchie Bridge, goes under the bridge, as many of you may be aware, and then continues down Railroad Avenue. As part of the approved design, the TART will be extended to the senior center. So instead of putting a sidewalk in place, which was what was called for with the reconstruction project on Grandview, there will now be a trail that will be offset. So no longer the narrow sidewalk along the right-of-way. TART learned in October that we got the RAP grant, which was very exciting.
we learned shortly after that Delamar was going to put the easement on hold. So that opportunity is not going to come to fruition at this time. So it was a chance to go back and talk to MEDC and talk to project partners about what we might want to do and what opportunities may be available. There will be, just to reassure the public and you as well, as we had mentioned before, kind of going throughout this project, we did have a plan B should Delamar not be able to be secured in time, and so there will be non-motorized connectivity, and that's what you see before you in the purple. It will be both a trail, 8-foot wide trail, right along Grandview Parkway, and a 6-foot wide, 5-foot wide, I believe, sidewalk that will be replaced pretty much where the existing sidewalk is today. So that is, again, part of the reconstruction project and is not the project that we had in the grant, which allows us an opportunity to extend New Trail. And that was a big deal for people when we were going through the public input process. So what we are able to do, and again, talking to MEDC partners, talking to project partners, what could we do to provide more trail, more connections, because the focus of the RAP grant is to provide gap funding for placemaking, in particular connecting to downtowns. And so we have an opportunity to extend and improve the trail and get more done on what was approved back in August for the final plan. So we saw it as kind of making lemonade out of some really good lemons, or cherry juice out of great cherries, however we want to say it around here. So with the Delamar piece on hold, we will be now looking to construct what was in the RAP grant. So again, the trail will extend from Sunset Park to Senior Center, connecting those public properties. We're very excited about that, to not have to put a sidewalk back, but instead have an improved trail. We will also be doing improvements between Murchie and Clinch. This is one of the oldest sections of asphalt trail, and if you've ever been there, it's pretty torn up. As we went forward this summer applying for the RAP grant, it was we did a lot of site visits, and it was very clear that's a very broken up section. With the Grandview reconstruction, there's also going to be improvements at Park Street there in our downtown. So this allows us to provide better trail connections to downtown there. We will also be able to tackle trail between Division and Hall Street. So this was something that we were excited about doing, and we couldn't do it until you guys stepped up and approved this plan. And this would provide the funding to build a trail on the south side of Grandview Parkway between Division and Hall Street. So that's where you see a lot of people parking in the summer right along Bay, and they're kind of carting all their wagons and their families and their bikes either in the grass or right in the middle of Bay Street. So we will be able to construct that trail and connect it to sidewalk that continues to Hall Street there at what will now be an improved intersection, pedestrian intersection at the Hawk Light. So we're very excited about that. So those would be where we would redirect, if you will, or extend those RAP funds. Since we don't have Delamar in there, we are able to do more with the funds that were committed. I also wanted to bring to your attention, because I hope that we can bring this to you. It's just something we're working very hard on, and you may be aware of it, and I certainly want the public to be aware of it. We are working, and the we is always collective. It's either city and TART, city, DDA, and TART. In this case, this is out of the DDA scope. So it's TART and the city. And we are working with landowners along Peninsula Drive, so connecting from the Senior Center all the way to Peninsula Drive with the hope of being able to secure those easements so that instead, again, of the sidewalk being put back, we would be able to put a trail back with the reconstruction of the parkway. So that is not in place. That's not what I can't bring you that good news tonight, but I did want you to be aware that that's something that we're working on. Future segments, this is not what we're able to tackle with this scope, but again, just to remind you of what we're working on is Peninsula Drive to Bryant Park. That is a separated trail that has been designed. We are working with the city to find funding for that. That will be a significant overhaul of that entire street. It will be to turn that back into a residential street, quiet it, calm it, narrow it, and provide safe and comfortable non-motorized facilities connecting all the way to Bryant Park. We are also working on improvements between West End Beach through Clinch Park. Those will probably be phased as well. So if you want to think about where the trail is, that's between the new restrooms, West End Beach restrooms, to the volleyball courts. And then there are plans, it's our understanding there are plans by the city and the DDA to revisit the open space. So we're kind of putting all the trail plans on hold and have those rolled into whatever master planning happens with the open space. And so that piece is a future date. And then we are also looking to work with any improvements that will be made along the Garfield stretch up through the city limits to Peninsula. So the Bryant Park to Eastern Avenue, we have a design, more than a concept design, but a pretty good design that follows what we had along Peninsula Drive. We're really excited about that and hopeful that that can be also incorporated, working with partners on our way up to Peninsula Township. So those are future segments, but I like to keep them on our radar because we're working really hard with the city and with our partners to bring them to fruition. So for next steps with the WRAP project, the intent is to bid the project. We're just about wrapped up. We have a new city engineer who's able to look at the plan sets. So we're moving those forward. Those should be bid in February, early February, and construction is expected to start this summer in conjunction or in timing with the Grandview reconstruction. And then next steps, of course, continued collaboration and looking for those funding opportunities. I'll just, yeah, those, if possible, to help, again, improve non-motorized mobility and transportation in our region. So that's it. I tried to be quick, and if you know me, this is about as quick as I can talk about trails. Any questions? Chris Cushman, Sean, Jean, we're all here.
Yeah, there's no motion attached to this, but please feel free, any questions you might have. Go ahead. Commissioner Shaw, yes, sorry.
So if Delamar has a change of heart and wants to provide an easement, the funding won't be there any longer, is that correct? You'll need to.
Yep, we'd have to seek new funding, correct. And we hope that Delamar does. It's a plug and play for sure.
Great.
I'm curious about this segment between Sunset Park and Senior Center.
Yeah.
Will that be at the full width, the 16-foot width?
Yes.
And
Separated
the
trail.
impact, any further impact on tree removal? That's been an issue, I know.
Yep, and we do call for trees to be removed. We've been working closely with the city parks folks to identify which ones. We actually moved it a little bit closer to the road to miss some. We'll be able to field adjust, and the intent is also to plant. So though we may be taking out some trees, we will be planting some trees in place of the sidewalk that would have gone in.
And this would be removal above and beyond those that have already been removed, yes?
I'm not aware of any that have already been removed. I'm sorry.
Sean has input,
Oh,
thank you.
I'm like, I don't know what that
I think you're speaking of what's been removed at Senior Center.
At Senior Center, and the segment of the trail that will cross that property.
Yeah, I think there's a potential for a few to be removed, but the most significant impact of tree removal is associated with the actual reconstruction of Senior Center, and they've carefully been trying to thread the trail through there, saving the oaks and the other trees throughout that area. And as Julie said, it was quite recently that we did another adjustment to the alignment, bringing it closer to the road as you're on the east end of Senior Center to miss some large growth trees.
Would it be possible to get a tree count with the widened trail versus sidewalk plan now?
Yep,
Thank
that can
you.
be supplied.
All right, any other questions or requests for information as we go through this process? All right, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Clark and Mr. Winter. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Julie and her team who took me on a 2-hour tour of the entire length. I'm a visual learner, and they had it all set up with cars and walking and moving around, and to walk the entire length and to see that with you and to see the brains working in real time on how we could, again, thread the trail versus removing trees. That was a real delight, and thank you for taking the time to do that with me.
Excellent. We'll move on to item number 3 then, which is of our old business. which is the discussion of a memorandum of understanding with Grand Traverse County, Safe Harbor, and the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness. And I'll hand that off to you.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. I have been catching up on this subject quite extensively since I even started applying for this position back in the summertime. And during the transition, it was a priority for me to work with the interim city manager and the partners at the table, including the city and the coalition and Safe Harbor, to get caught up and understand where all the parties were sort of where they were at. We actually had a really productive Zoom meeting in December. I can't remember, right before Christmas or right after?
Right before.
And so we met earlier in January, and the intent of this is to memorialize these relationships that we're committed to talking to one another and doing it in a transparent way with not only the public who's here today, but also just with each other's boards. The MOU is not binding of any dollars. There's no plan. This is just a commitment to talk, and really for the commission to give me the opportunity and the staff to have those discussions with our partners.
Yes, so just to underline that, this is not a funding obligation. This is an understanding amongst the parties involved. I think sometimes when people see things, they can and know that there's other pieces to it, those can sometimes become muddled. So I don't know if anybody else wanted to make any comments on it? No? Okay. So we opened up for discussions or questions from anyone on the commission. Go ahead, Tim.
I'm just curious who on the city's behalf will be representing the city, in these ongoing discussions. And maybe it's premature, but could this body get a memo outlining what maybe some of the top concerns are that we're coming to the table with, we as a city are coming to the table with, just so we can stay abreast of what's transpiring, or what the intent is, even like what are our hopes, I guess, would be, right? Because it's a negotiation.
Right, and I think this is just an example of I'd like to do that, and I'd like permission to do that. And so in terms of who would be representing the city, certainly myself and our staff council, and of course, I would leave it up to the board to decide if any board members would want to be in that room. Recently, in our last meeting, it was represented by Commissioner Wilson, Stanley, and Mayor Shamrow. So I would leave that up to, I guess I'm just waiting for guidance, and then we can start working on those exact things that you're looking for.
And it's a good question of what kind of facilitated that. So myself and Mayor Pro Tem, Wilson were invited to the discussion, and the invitation was extended to Commissioner Stanley because of her work with the health clinic here in town to hear the initial discussions. What the goal here is we did not want to get the staff down a far road of not having any input or not having this discussion open and have the commission say, you're halfway down a trail, but we'd really like to see it go this way, or this way instead. So this is really just to formalize everything up front and start the conversation versus coming to you in the middle of the conversation and having staff have to ask at that point. So I don't know if that helps at all, Tim, or not.
It does. Maybe, Ms. Vogel, you could lay out how you hope, say we approve this, which hoping we do approve it, but for the public's benefit as well as ours, how do the next 6, 9, 12 months proceed as far as getting input, bringing it back to this body periodically so that the public can hear what's going on, et cetera, because I know there are public concerns. What do you foresee?
Yeah, so I just want to say that I appreciate the feedback that I've already received through the commission email. The more feedback we receive, the more information I have to understand what the concerns are and how potentially to address those concerns. And I do believe that we're working on a study session for February 5th on this topic, so we can start to develop what the board would like to see in terms of how often I come back and bring an update to the board and what you'd like to see in those updates. So those are all things that I'm really looking forward to working with the commission and with our partners on developing in these open meetings and being able to bring that back for discussion.
Thank you.
Other questions, or go ahead, Heather.
I am really happy to see governmental units working together, although I don't know that the county has actually signed on to this MO.
It was too late, Madam Mayor.
yes, please.
To answer your question, it was too late to get it on their 17th agenda. We had just missed the deadline. So I believe, I don't know where it stands just yet, but I believe their next meeting is February 7th.
I feel like there's, the Housing North is missing because the only solution that anybody in the whole world has been able to come up with to solve homelessness is housing. I feel like they're missing from this discussion. And I feel that the commitment of this MOU to keep Safe Harbor open year-round should be taken off. I would feel better if this was just a discussion amongst governmental units and stakeholders, as in Safe Harbor, experts, Housing North, to talk about what to do. But by putting Safe Harbor, by making the commitment to for a plan to keep Safe Harbor open 24/7,
It's not
all
24/7.
all year round. It's it gives the impression that we're taking a problem that exists in another neighborhood and moving it to a different neighborhood. When I think we need to be thinking bigger about this. This is an emergency shelter situation at Safe Harbor. And by opening it up in the summer, you're declaring that it's an emergency shelter in the summer, which I think you're going to have trouble explaining or justifying. What makes the summer an emergency? Does this mean that the Pines will be shut down completely? I mean, these are all things to be talking about. But by putting as the point number one at the top here in the executive summary that there's a commitment to keep it open 12 months out of the year, you're setting a lot of expectations and creating a lot of concern.
Commissioner,
I would like to see that taken off.
well, Commissioner Shaw, just I agree with you that there's these bigger discussions that are going to be had, and I think there are some coalitions already having those, and Housing North is part of those as the bigger discussions. But this in particular is about having the year-round shelter as a part of the solution, not the only solution. So that is why it's brought to us in this way, and that's what the memorandum of understanding is, because we can have a lot of places where people sit at the table, everywhere from, I think Traverse Connects addressing housing, to the Coalition to End Homelessness, and others are doing these conversations in different places of the larger. So this MOU is meant to focus in on what a 12-month of the year shelter could look like. Doesn't mean that you might be opposed to it, others might be opposed to it, but that's where that's why we're having this conversation right now, to have this part of the discussion opened up, because it is not one that exists right now. It's not an option that exists right now, and it's not a discussion that we've had previously. So that's why that is being brought forward to us right now. Mr. Treadwell.
Yes, and this is just what it could look like, what funding would be required, and how staffing and the cities and various partners that need to be brought on board, what it would look like. We can envision it being a year-round facility, but we don't necessarily know, are we talking that it will be open 365? Are we picturing it operating 24 hours a day during the winter or other times? Those aren't explicitly on the table. We are merely looking at 12-month operation and seeing what that could and would entail.
And to clarify a little bit too as we go forward, because this has come up, is the special land use permit that exists right now does only allow for the winter months. So that whole, as this conversation moves forward, if it continues to move forward, that SLUP process will also have to be going on. This isn't going to be, the memorandum of understanding is approved. There's some discussion amongst all the entities engaged, and then it comes to us for a vote on just a policy. There's a whole special land use permit that has to be addressed, that has to go through that process, which goes through planning and the city commission. So there's a lot of moving pieces to this, so that's why the memorandum of understanding was put forward, was to have that that kind of more operational conversation happening at the same time, potentially a functional conversation would be going forward with the special land use permit. So I say that both for, if we enter into the memorandum of understanding, that opens staff up to have that conversation. There's a lot of other things that will be brought, other than just updates, other actions that would be brought forward to this commission for making decisions as the process goes along. It's not a one and done here, and then we get presented with a final project with, nothing in between. So, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Shaw.
But what if you removed safe harbor from that first bulleted sentence? Develop a proposed plan to keep a shelter open for year-round, an overnight shelter open year-round, effective in 2024.
The shelter that currently exists is Safe Harbor, and finding another location for a shelter that exists would be in a whole other process.
But that is what you're going to be talking about, right?
Right, well, that's why Safe Harbor is mentioned specifically in it and not a generalized shelter.
They are the only entity with a SLUP that operates a shelter this time of year.
And so certainly.
Yeah, I guess as I read the list of participating stakeholders in the MOU, I wondered if there was any room for expansion there. I think having the neighborhood that's impacted being involved and having a voice from day one would be a really important thing to do. I would also like to see if the police department and their quick response team concept might be at the table even for the earliest conversations. So are there possibilities to expand your pool of stakeholders and make sure that everybody impacted has a voice from the beginning?
That is absolutely the intention. This is an operational document between these entities to have these conversations, and we needed that first so that we could go out to all of the other established stakeholders in the neighborhood. And I actually have already spoken with our police chief, our fire chief, and I look forward to reaching out to those other stakeholders, like you've mentioned, including our library, Housing North, and I don't want to overstep the mark, but that'll be the first thing on the agenda. And again, I felt like this was a way to put it out there that we want to have this conversation. We would like to include as many stakeholders as possible, but I just wanted direction from the board on how to move forward and make sure that the boards of these other organizations were saying, yes, it's okay for you guys to talk and have this. And this is a model that was very successful between the 6 counties of the Northern Lakes Regional Mental Health Authority, when we all needed to come together over the last year and a half to move forward with the new enabling agreement. That was my experience, that very first step was the 6 counties saying we are agreeing to have a conversation. And so this was just the board saying we're authorizing that conversation to start.
And sorry if I could add the neighborhood part. In addition to that, I guess Tim and I are the last grizzled veterans up here, and Jim Crowther's not that you're grizzled, Jim, you're a very handsome man. But that we were all here through the original SLUP process that established it, and part of that, and I imagine would be of anything that we had, was regular meetings of neighborhood association or representatives and things as well, through not just through the formulated or the process as it comes to fruition, but also check-ins and open communication, and that went on for several years after to get the feedback and make sure everything was going according to plan. So that's also built into the SLUP process, as well as the memorandum of understanding information gathering process too. So,
and then just one more question / comment. If there were any possibility of engaging the townships from the beginning and looking at this as a regional solution, perhaps, to expand the scope of it so that the focus isn't solely this one building in this one location, but to see how regionally we might be able to address what's happening.
good idea. Commissioner Warner, I think you had your hand up.
Can can we, really a genuine question, commit that the meetings when these four parties are to meet will be public meetings? Because I think, to me, part of it is like the discussion about year-round operation has been going on for years. I've been in some of those discussions, but they're not on behalf of the city as an entity. They're just individual commissioners or mayors or members of the public or Safe Harbor or whatever other entity just talking about the possible, a possible future. So to me, those discussions, whether we memorialize this or not, those discussions will continue. People talk about that as a possibility. So having this, especially if we can assure the public that this is a public process and these will be public meetings where they are invited to sit and make public comment at the end of the meeting, et cetera, I think that could help just with the transparency to reassure the public that there won't be surprises that come out every so many months or whatever it might be, but just a more transparent process. Thanks.
So just to clarify, Commissioner Warner, because I think that's a good idea. So getting together for meetings outside of just the Monday at 7 o'clock things of updates, but I guess to kind of clarify both for to make sure I'm understanding, but also the public, there might be a time though where Liz or Chief Richmond picks up the phone and calls the county and they're not going to make that a meeting, or they might have a 3 out of 4 meeting that we're not all at. You're just kind of looking for a periodic general assembly, as it were.
Well, if the parties, the four parties, end up with some regular schedule, whatever that might be, whether it's once a month, once every other month, quarterly, if there is a regular meeting, that those regular meetings, if they can be open to the public. I understand that individuals, say representing the city and the county, will have conversations, and that's fine, but and helpful to move things along. But when there's an official meeting, all four parties, let's get everybody updated on what's going on. If the public can hear that at the same time, so much the better.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we can do. My only just kind of pushback on that is I was hoping, and I think in my understanding as we created this MOU, that there would be some safe space to brainstorm ideas without any sort of commitment, because when you're brainstorming, ideas come up and then it's like, no, yes, no. And so how do you create that space? And so it's entirely up to, if the board's will is to make these public meetings, I would certainly oblige that. I just think that it would be nice for some of the initial meetings, like the strategy, like how are we actually going to make this, how are these discussions going to go? Like, is there a grace period for us to sort of figure that out and sort of come up with a roadmap or a game plan before we then have standard public meetings? I just think we need, this is such a new conversation that's being authorized, right, to happen, that it would be nice just to have just to have that place to brainstorm, because one little idea that might not even go anywhere, that might not have any legs, then it ends up, I just don't want rumors to start before there's any chance of the inner workings to sort of play out.
I see some head nodding to the grace period.
Well, I understand. Yeah, I mean, I understand the concern.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like, but.
And I think we can discuss that more at the study session. I think that these are all good things that you're bringing up, and I think that we can get some more clarity on how to proceed. And maybe this is the next 2 weeks between now and that study session is that grace period for us to kind of come up with some of those ideas, and then push those. And in speaking with Leah, our consultant, she said, how do you envision this study session to go? And I said, well, until we have an MOU, I'm not really sure where to start. So this is actually, you're providing us with some good ideas for some framework.
Do we have any more questions or comments or a motion?
We're not having public comment?
We have to have a motion first for public comment.
I'll make a motion that the joint resolution of cooperation by the Traverse City Commission, Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners, Safe Harbor of Grand Traverse, and the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness be adopted, which authorizes the mayor and city clerk to execute the MOU between the aforementioned parties, outlining the parties' commitment to work together to facilitate the provision of year-round overnight shelter for the region's unhoused population.
Commissioner Warner, motion, and second by Wilson. And now, we'll open this up for public comment.
Can I make one?
Oh, sorry.
One
real quick.
comment as
Final
you
comment from
approach
Commissioner.
is just it was brought up as far as housing, like housing first approach to end homelessness. I would just hope as this moves forward in the coming months to year that we're capable of following two paths at the same time. Having these discussions as well as pursuing whatever's out there as a community and as a city to provide more housing, and that it's not, oh, we're working on this, we'll get back to that later. Let's do both.
It's a good reminder going into this. Thank you, Tim. Oh.
Just briefly, I know I want to hear the public comment, but so I won't take much time on it. Housing first, housing ends homelessness. Housing alone does not effectively end homelessness, and so I think it's very important that the discussions we're having are also about bringing in partners who will provide the resources necessary to support individuals who are moving from being unsheltered, chronically unsheltered, into one step into emergency shelter, and ultimately into permanent supportive housing.
Yes, thank you. We'll go ahead and open up for public comment right now.
Can I just ask for a show of hands on the number of folks who intend to speak to this issue tonight?
And if people could then start to line up at the podium.
Yes, yeah. So if the first speaker could come to the podium, and then to facilitate public comment so there's not a lag between speakers, we ask that there be a line of folks so that we're not having to wait in between folks who want to speak, and so that we have an environment where everyone feels comfortable expressing their opinion. We request that there be no reaction whatsoever to the comments made by those making them. And so we'll start with the first speaker, and again, please line up behind them so we can keep things moving. Thank you.
Hey, my name's Cam. I'm a resident of TC. The one thing I see missing from this conversation are the residents in Safe Harbor. I think y'all should talk to them. I think that they're missing from this piece, and they should be at the table. And I think it should definitely be open year-round. It's one resource the city really needs, and all my friends who are like involved in social work and housing's an issue they work on always mention how Safe Harbor should stay open year-round. It's an important resource to this community, and I look forward to hopefully it being a public effort, us all being able to decide how this happens. I think accessible housing ends homelessness. I think people having housing, us looking at housing as a human right in the city and figuring out solutions like other cities have done, like tiny house programs, you know, zoning would have to be changed. That's a whole other issue. But there's a lot of things that can be done. And this is the 21st century. We can have moderated community discussions very easily and democratically. Thank you.
Thank you, Cam.
Hi, my name is Dustin McCracken. 24 hours ago, I just got out of the Pines. I have 2 Siberian Huskies that I've been taking care of that mean the world to me. I do believe that there has to be some kind of change, not necessarily a opened shelter all year round. I really think that for me being in the Pines for about 4 months, I have understood a little bit more about the Pines. I lived in Traverse City for 4.5 years, paid my bills, took care of everything. I took care of my puppy in the Pines just for walks. It changed throughout the years. A lot of people don't have any mental structure to get a job. So I'm here to basically give you guys an idea, maybe a big giant building that has like maybe 50 rooms or something like that, has a little therapist or something like that. But the main thing about this building is everybody has to contribute. That could be gardening, that could be some kind of construction, some kind of thing that helps the body be stronger. So they can take the next step, so they can get off their feet and everything. Because if a shelter is just open all year round, you're just giving them all the resources. They're staying in the pines for years on end because everything is given to them. They don't have the structure, they don't have the strength to stand on by themselves. They need someone to give something, and then they take that wherever they go. If you give them $100, they could buy alcohol, they could buy food, but it doesn't help them in the situation because they don't have the mental ability to stand on their own feet. I think that just need a building where someone can stay there, maybe have like a time frame, like a 3 months to a 6 months time frame. You can get a job, you don't have to pay rent or anything, but you have that mental help, you have that mental guidance. So when you do save money, like $2,000, $3,000, you're not just trying to spend it. You can save that to get a place, a vehicle, get out of the homeless situation, and you're doing that on your own with a little bit of guidance with a therapist or a building that shows love and structure where you're contributing every day just to get stronger. Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin.
My name is Patrick. I'm a longtime resident of Traverse City. I currently live in Suttons Bay, but I am a native of Traverse City. Lived all my life there except for the time I went away for 23 years, military, not prison. Yeah, I always say that. I like what my first two speakers had said, and I do kind of agree with the fact that having a facility open year-round would be beneficial. But my only question is, even though the facility has extended its duration, has it extended its capacity? Currently, I do believe the numbers are we have 280 current bed spaces, 85, correct me if I'm wrong. And we have, I believe, 30, 35 people that still cannot be housed even within the structure of the emergency housing or emergency shelter. So my concern would be if we do adopt this, which I think is a great idea, we need to get the discussion going. Without talk, there's not action. But my concern would be that once we get to a certain point and we do open it year-round, that the townships are going to say, okay, there's no more camping. And then now what do we do for those folks, those 35, 40 people that no longer have housing? You know, and there is a very strong possibility, too, that we have to stay within our legal frameworks for sure, but we do need, folks need a place to go, whether it's a tent, a car, a cabin, whatever, a sleeping bag. I just would not like to see where the ordinance come in where now we make camping illegal or the capability of an individual house them or shelter themselves illegal. That would be my concern. And I know, Attorney, ma'am, do you like to go by your first name or last?
You don't have to try to say my last name.
Correct
That's
me if I'm
ridiculous.
wrong. There is a legal precedence out there, Martin versus Bosie. And I think that's something we need to keep in the back of our head, that we almost have an obligation to make sure these folks have a place to shelter themselves, you know. So either we need to make, that duration's great, and I support that. I do support the fact that we should keep it open year-round, because homelessness is not 6 months out of a year. Let's face the facts, it's year-round, okay? But again, my concern is, you know, are we gonna make it illegal to be human? That's all I have.
Please, no reactions, so everybody feels comfortable. Thank you.
Hey everyone, Jack Langford, 441 Fifth Street, so I'm a city resident. I am Northern Michigan's youth and young adult homeless responder. However, when I'm making this comment, this is on myself, Jack Langford, the citizen, based on my experience working in homeless response, but I do not represent any organization tonight. So I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for talking about homelessness. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's scary. There's no getting around that. So I just want to show my gratitude that we are talking about it at a city and county level and that there's willingness to do that. I really think this amendment and sitting down with partners and having some kind of structure to make sure we're moving forward on these targets is great. I understand Ms. Shaw's concern, so I just wanted to bring up the concept of transitional housing versus emergency shelter. Transitional housing is a bridge between unsheltered and going into full-time housing, whenever it's permanent supportive or rapid rehousing or an HCV. Emergency shelter is, to me, a survival need of that night. Emergency shelter is on a night-to-night basis, and not everyone that uses emergency shelter is homeless. Sometimes people get into domestic arguments, you know, a wife kicks her husband out. That might be someone that utilizes emergency shelter. A young adult comes out as transgender to their parents blow up, so they stay at an emergency shelter for a few nights until they're able to go back into secure housing. With that being said, housing emergencies can happen year-round. I work with 18 to 24-year-olds. I want you to think of, you know, when you are working with an 18 to 24-year-old, especially one that's experienced trauma, abuse, and things like that, and they don't have that frontal cortex done, their risk detection isn't done, their decision-making isn't great. When I tell them, oh, you need to stay out on the streets, you need to sleep in a car because none of the shelters have room for you, or it's summer, there's no room, there's no emergency shelter, that young adults at high risk for situations that happen late at night because they aren't somewhere safe. I understand how difficult this can be. I definitely agree with bringing the neighborhood in. That will help prevent, you know, feelings of resentment and anything like that. But I do think this is a really great step to keep moving forward. I think you guys have done a really good job incorporating different partners, and I do agree, you know, we should not criminalize someone for being homeless. I would also like to remind you that having a CSC, a criminal sexual charge, can make someone ineligible for shelter services, especially if that shelter works with children or families. People also have the right to decline shelter. Maybe they're trying to stay sober. Drug use does happen in a shelter. There's nothing you can do about that. Drug use happens everywhere. Someone may have used drugs before coming in here today, so someone that's trying to stay sober has the right to not want to get into a situation that might cause them to relapse. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jack.
Justin Reed, 630 Cottage Drive, Apartment 1B. I'm Traverse City resident. So it was suggested that we go ahead and we look at the other townships for regionally for homelessness. And the closest thing to that was Camp Pugsley, and that was Five Lake Township. And what ended up happening there was the person who was going to be involved with this, he got booed out of that township meeting. So, I mean, we're defined as an urban center, so that's what I think that the townships are going to say is, hey, if Five Lake Township tried it, that didn't work out. And so it's going to be very hard pressed for the townships to say yes to anything. I mean, you can still talk to them, and that's fine, but I would say it's very hard pressed for the rest of the townships to go forward with this. Just because I know Garfield Township, during the Joint Planning Commission meeting between, for the Commons between Garfield Township and Traverse City, that was a comment that was brought up about the pines. And the person who was in there, the trustee from Garfield Township, said, well, we got rid of that problem by kicking them all out and making it legal for camping. So, yeah, that's what I think, is going to happen. So, thank you.
Thank you, Justin.
Hi, my name is Sarah Masick. I'm the Executive Director of the Grand Traverse Area Children's Garden. I'm the Boardman Neighborhood Association's Vice President. But I'm here to speak to you as a resident of Wellington Street, my personal opinion. I've actually been watching this issue, Liz, especially since the beginning, since the very beginning. There were a lot of options and spaces for Safe Harbor to be. There are people in this room tonight who are opposed to this MOU, who helped start Safe Harbor. It has been essentially not what we thought it would be. The shelter itself does not have any air conditioning, and that could be a real problem for some of the residents there. It gets hot. Not everybody is sober that walks in there, and we don't necessarily have the police department to respond to all of this. Our sector patrol officer was removed to help with this issue in the central neighborhood. We don't have one right now. There is Officer Christ, I cannot remember her last name. She might come in the spring, but they do not have the funding. That's the text that I got. I understand that the QRT has been very successful or has seen some successes. The big problem that I see, or I guess the conflict, is that I'm not too sure if that directly relates to Safe Harbor because it doesn't deal with alcoholism. And that's one of the larger issues that we have. Okay, a lot of alcoholics, inebriated people that are violent, that use profanity, that destroy property. The other night, and forgive me, I am not the best public speaker, okay? I'm way
doing
better in
fine.
your office. So, you know, like the red, is my face red and I'm in hives, just
You're doing
ignore
well.
it, okay? I'm a gardener, right? So just know that. But the other night, it was a blizzard. I want to say it was either Saturday or Sunday. Somebody went out to the Pines to do outreach and offered people rides, gave people blankets, made sure everybody was okay. I saw this on Facebook. I said, how many people are out there? And then I called Safe Harbor and said, how many beds do you have? They had a lot of beds. I just want to make this point, okay? I'm friends with and have communication with people who do outreach. People are building yurts out there and things like that. It's not helpful for the situation. The idea would be not to stay in the Pines at night. You know, it would be to go elsewhere. So these solutions, these groups, I think it's a wonderful idea. Let's all get together. I've been saying for a long time, we have 90 homeless people in Traverse City. There's something like, I did count it up one day, 236 people who work to help the homeless in Traverse City. What's going on? You know, I had a discussion 2 years ago. Why doesn't...
Ms. Masick, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Your time's elapsed, but thank you for your comments.
Oh, wait, can I say two things?
We'll
No?
allow 2 things.
Okay, Hall Park, please, okay? These kids use Hall Park. There are something like 300 kids every day in Hall Park. It's going to be, the unintended consequences of keeping Safe Harbor open are going to be serious, and it's going to involve children. It's going to involve my children. Apart from that, I can't tell you, there are so many people in this room, so many emails. Please, this is not the time, okay? Please look out for the best interests of your city.
Thank you.
My name is Scott Wick. I'm a resident of Traverse City. I live on the 400 block of Washington Street. I think the reason I moved to Traverse City from Chicago was the people. And I think people look out for one another and they take care of one another. I also think that this is a very, very, very complex issue. And I think we're having a conversation right now that only involves shelter. I think we need to expand the stakeholders. We need to show empathy to the folks that are experiencing homelessness right now, but we also need to show empathy to the residents and
Sir, if you would just direct your comments toward the commission, just look this way if you would. Thank you.
I think we need to show the residents and the homeowners of the community that is where Safe Harbor is located the same empathy. Thank you.
My name is Harry Hubble. Lived in Traverse City most of my life. I live south of town now, still conduct business in Traverse. I've been involved around the homeless community for a couple of decades. I've seen things come and go. I want to thank you for what all of you on the commission have done already with the issues, and I would hope that you understand that it's not something simple that can easily be written off. There are multiple things here. I had the opportunity to be part of a group of community members, a small group about 20 years ago, and we were dealing with things we felt we had to react to, and that was in the back pages of the Record Eagle. People were dying, but it wasn't really heard of because they were homeless. They were out on the streets. So we reacted to that and decided that based on a temperature, we would open a facility and allow them to come in. We did that simply as a community action. No agencies, no government intervention, nothing else. We did it just as a group of community members. Within the next few years, other community people responding to what we had done came alongside of us, and we grew to over 24 churches and more than 2,000 volunteers, which you now call Safe Harbor. That was community action only, and the one point I simply want to make tonight is this. If you've been watching the social media in Traverse City lately, as so many of our people who have been up here talking have said, you will notice that there is a great activity in the community around this issue of homelessness. The community is getting involved. People are going out there regularly checking on the people in the Pines, and they're making sure that they're surviving. One of our priorities this year as the groups that are going out there is this. Unlike last year, this year we intend that no one is picked up in a body bag and hauled out of there. That's one of the first things we're about. After that, we intend to bring the community mindset to the table and start working on solutions, offer additional solutions to what you're already working with. I like the idea of a year-round shelter that allows the partnerships that work with Safe Harbor to work with the people who need housing and stuff year-round instead of just in a limited time. That's going to go further in doing things. I would hope that no thoughts of laws or resolutions to make homelessness illegal, like so many states in the West have, who are now calling on the Supreme Court to overturn lower court rulings. I would hope that doesn't happen in Traverse City.
Mr. Hubble, thank you for your comments. Your time's elapsed.
Thank you, Harry.
And if there are other speakers, please make sure to be queuing up in line. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name's Emily Cashel, and I live at 715 Webster, and I have dual residency at 500 Webster as I care for my elderly father there. I'm overcome with emotion, but it's because this homelessness issue is very near and dear to my heart. I'm on the front lines of this every day with this community that walks to and from wherever they need to be to make it to Safe Harbor. And it's, as I talk to my neighbors, we all have like a litany of experiences that have put our kids in very unsafe circumstances. And not to be insensitive, thank you for including us in this conversation and in these open meetings. I think we need to have a voice. Last time Safe Harbor was approved, we actually, the Boardman neighborhood had asked to have a mediation, a legal mediation, and we were denied the opportunity. So I know that a lot of community members feel like, what's the point of even like trying to have our voices heard? But at this point in time, it's, I just feel like if we have a year-round opening as the only solution, then it's possible that this community demographic, these numbers could double, quadruple, and I just don't think we're prepared to handle that impact. I had someone walk into my house and follow my 8-year-old daughter into our home recently, and I wasn't there, and I called the police, and I think that our police department does the absolute stellar job. But they were overwhelmed, and they're like, it happens a lot. I had to formally ask to have a police report filed, which really surprised me. And I don't think this issue is being fairly reported on at all. So I think we need to collect a lot more information and maybe get input from third-party study groups and just slow our roll. And I know that that attitude is echoed very loudly through the neighborhood. So thank you for taking time to listen to me.
Thank you, Emily.
Jim Carruthers, 218 West 11th Street. I'm a city resident. I will state first I support this resolution, but I will elaborate on first Commissioner Werner's comments that we do need to take this beyond just warming shelter and talk about housing and housing first. These models work. I'll elaborate on Ms. Stanley's comments about it's not just about housing, even though we need housing. We need the support services that go along with that. I am the chair of Dan's House. We have purchased a duplex in Garfield Township just out of the city limits, where we provide housing to men that have come out of the Pines who have chronic alcohol disorder. And we work with the community health clinic. We work with Michigan Supportive Housing for case management. We make sure they're getting the services they need, and slowly we're working to make them better people and better individuals, and hopefully they will become members on their own. But that's an important comment that Ms. Stanley made, that we need to have the support services with that. And I also would like to elaborate on Ms. Anderson's comment about this is a regional issue, and the townships do need to be included, because people from the townships are coming to Traverse City on a regular basis. We're housing people who are from the townships in the Traverse City area in the Pines. So we have to have the townships involved, not just at the table, but financially. They need to be helping with this. The services are in Traverse City for the most part, so people are gravitating here. I also understand Ms. Shaw's concern and some of the concerns here about the neighborhoods. We also have to listen to the neighborhoods because this is all happening within our neighborhoods. So we're doing our best. We originally, when we did this with Safe Harbor, we had a memorandum of understanding on the property next door. And I have not followed through on that, but we're supposed to be working with either Safe Harbor or Goodwill to build a transitional unit between the side tracks and the Safe Harbor property. That was a major part of that process. So I hope we could push that further along and make that work. So housing is the solution. Supportive housing with services is what we need to do. So I hope that this can graduate further into this conversation. I've been sitting on, for 30 years, coalitions to talk about housing. I think we need to be building housing. And it's not going to happen smack dab at downtown Traverse City. It might happen on the edges, but it might happen in the townships as well. But we, as a region, need to support all of this and support all the agencies here and all the people living in the Pines and working with them to provide them safe shelter with services. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Hello, Michelle Howard, 435 West 11th Street. I am a city resident and the library director. I am here to support what Commissioner Shaw said. I have worries that if this MOU is only to look at shelter for the evenings, it puts us in a situation of expense for the library and other organizations because we have to respond to it. Homeless doesn't end at 8 a.m. when the shelter's doors close. Those people have to go somewhere. When Safe Harbor originally started, we did not have a day shelter. The shelter didn't open until last year, and that was a result of community members coming together and also the library being in a perilous situation where people were refusing to come in our doors because we had so much behavior problems as a result of the shelter being open. And I think right now we spend about $44,000 on a security guard. And if we have the Safe Harbor open year-round, I think we would have to explore that, which would cost the library probably another $41,000. So this decision to explore year-round shelter for Safe Harbor doesn't come at no expense to some of the organizations that live and work in that area because we have a fiduciary duty to protect our assets. And unfortunately, some of the side effects of people who are in unhoused does, happen in our places of work, and we have a duty to protect those. So I hope you reconsider this. I hope you expand it, like Commissioner Shaw said, to really look at what are our services, what are our day services, what are our night services, and how can we do better for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name's... breaking your stuff.
Give him a moment for microphone malfunction.
There we go. Oh, yeah, it could take 3 minutes just.
There you go. You did well. You did well.
My name's Tom Roop. I'm the president of Traverse Area Community Sailing. First, I'd like to congratulate the library. 25 years. It's an iconic design, and it's an institution that anchors that neighborhood. That it's been transformative for that neighborhood. Traverse Area Community Sailing, or TAX, this year is our 30th year at Hall Park. We have an amazing partnership with the city of Traverse City. It started 30 years ago in Hall Park, which at the time was a dump site and a water test pier for the state of Michigan in Boardman Lake because of Boardman Lake problems, which have since been cleaned up. So we were there from the very beginning. We've made amazing investments. We built a boathouse and gave it to the city. We've maintained that boathouse as well as other parcels of land there under a management agreement that's been very successful through the city, before this board has been elected. It's just been a wonderful relationship. To give you an idea about what our program is, It's nationally recognized what we do. The crown jewel of what our program is our adaptive sailing program. We have other organizations come to visit to emulate what we do with our adaptive kids. It's amazing. If you ever have a chance, I'd invite you down to look at it. Last year we had 874 kids go through TAX. That's kind of an average year for us. It's been higher. We host a lot of regattas for out-of-town schools that show up. We just had one this spring, or this fall. There were 14 teams from around the Midwest that showed up for it. Each team has, 10, 12 kids on it, along with parents. So it's a place in our community that other communities all want to come to because of what Hall Park has become. Our number one priority is for the safety of our children that come to our park. A lot of people are familiar with Hickory, how it's such a wonderful atmosphere where you sort of pull up, kids get out, go skiing. As a parent, you feel like it's a magical place because they're going to be safe.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Rip, your time's elapsed. Thank you.
Okay, can I just say two more things?
You can have 2 sentences.
2 sentences. One is, as you do your due diligence, check on the incident report with the police department. And in the last year, the fire department had 2 hazmat responses at Hall Park. So those are the types of things that our children that we're trying to shelter them from.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Any further public comment on this item? Thank you, everyone, for sharing as you came up here and from every experience that we have in our community, which is a very diverse community as far as people's housing and living experiences. So thank you all for coming up and sharing all of your thoughts. I just wanted to quickly say a couple things really quick. As we went over the memo, we try to summarize these things as much as possible, but one thing that has been in the initial discussions that both Dustin and Jack mentioned early on is that this is an emergency shelter. So one of the topics for discussion with this MOU would be, what is the process for emergency? What is that defined as? I think because we tend to think of it as the winter and the harsh climates, that I think some people think of it as it's just where people live for the winter, and that's not the purpose of an emergency shelter. So that is part of the discussions that'll be had, as well as by the city being a partner in this and a discussion. Our city obviously includes our Traverse City, both fire department and police department, the QRT, all of those other groups that have been mentioned, as their input would be considered as we have these conversations. So, it's a big topic, it's a big issue as a whole, and it's a big topic within this big issue. So memos can't always summarize everything that's already been said, and discussions like this only help us to expand the conversation that will be had going forward, wherever that leads us. So I just wanted to kind of summarize that based on a lot of what we've been hearing here. So that said from me, do we have some final comments from the commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, I feel that there's a happy and easy solution to this, where all of us on the board, on the commission, including myself, could enthusiastically support this MOU. And that is by removing the first bullet point in the task list, which is develop a proposed plan to keep Safe Harbor open for year-round overnight shelter effective in 2024. The second bullet point still includes the possibility of keeping Safe Harbor open. It says develop cost estimates, funding strategies, and an operating plan for year-round overnight shelter operations. But it does not absolutely commit keeping this one operation open or opening it 24 or 12 months a year this year. By leaving that first bullet point in, you're putting all this focus on that one single task instead of looking at this bigger picture and trying to create solutions that work for transitional housing, for emergency housing, for bringing housing north in, for just lots of other options. It focuses it so much on safe harbor that I feel that we're going to get lost and we're going to end up with a lot of controversy. But just removing that one single bullet point leaves all these options open and still includes safe harbor.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Mr. Treadwell?
Yes, I would say, countering that Safe Harbor, as it exists now, is the only emergency shelter that operates in Grand Traverse County, not just in Traverse City. It's the only one that we have a special land use permit and thus a direct relationship between the organization and the city. And therefore, if we are moving forward at looking at how to address this issue on a year-round basis, all 12 months of the year, then this is the logical first step. It doesn't preclude us from taking additional steps and trying to engage, say, our township partners to see if they are able to or willing to open up shelter capacity in their jurisdiction, or to allow camping as had historically been permitted in certain public land and other adjacent townships, and now is no longer permitted, so those people are camping in the Pines. But there's one thing that we can operate on, and that is working with Safe Harbor. We can't tell an adjacent township what to do. We can bring them to the table and say, hey, this is what we'd like, but we can't ask for things outside of our jurisdiction unless we have additional tools brought to the table that, at this point, it might uncover some of those tools, but we don't know what those are. If there's another organization that is looking to maybe not have an emergency shelter, maybe have some transitional housing that can relieve some of the capacity needs at Safe Harbor, then that is still part of the picture, but that is not something that we are going to look first and foremost. That's something that could come out through the discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell. Any other comments from commissioners? I think I would add, as I was on for a brief period of time, that as the, I keep wanting to call it a steering committee, but it wasn't, the neighborhood discussion group that included Traverse City Police Department, the neighborhoods adjacent, staff of Safe Harbor, we had some more discussions about how the operations worked. And part of that is, as people are using the emergency shelter, is to have resources available to get them on the path to transitional housing, to health care, and other things that they need. I think when we look at this and we hear this, and I hear this in Commissioner Shaw's concerns as well, is it sounds like it's Safe Harbor alone in this, and I think that Safe Harbor has partners in the community as well that they work on as part of the process, as using the emergency shelter as one step in the housing profile that we are working on as we try to move people into permanent housing. So I just kind of wanted to underline that Safe Harbor isn't out there on their own, as not connected to some of the other organizations that are working on other aspects of permanent housing. Okay, anything else, now that I put 2 cents in? Anything else from staff on this? Okay, we have the motion before us. I believe it's been a bit, but I believe that was from, oh, sorry, one other thing I had a note to make. Mr. Crothers brought up the housing next door to it that is being still explored. MSHDA does not like its location very much, so it keeps kind of getting struck down, but there are groups actively trying to work to get that property put into something more productive than snow storage for us downtown. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a good point. So with that, I believe the Commissioner Warner made the motion and Wilson seconded, if I wrote that down well enough. So all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Roll call.
Commissioner Anderson?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Nay.
Commissioner Stanley?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Werner?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson?
Yes.
And Mayor Shamrow?
Yes. So motion passes. Thank you all for entering that discussion. Thank you for the community for showing up. As we mentioned, this is not by far the last conversation we'll have, and this commits us to having conversations at this point. So there's still a lot to be discussed and to work out. So we hope you all continue to be engaged and continue to communicate with us, because it always helps us to be aware of what's going on. Moving on with that, I'd like to welcome relegating you, State Representative Betsy Kofia here. She was kind enough, she was going to speak to us in December, but we were transitioning, so she kindly agreed to come here in January, and thank you for waiting through our packed agenda, but hopefully a lot of items of local interest that you're probably following. Uh-oh, the mic gave out on you.
Oh. Ben, help.
There's the gentleman that had the magic touch.
Thank you. Good evening, City Commission and members of the community. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. So, as a former local elected official who literally sat in your seats, but county commission, but this chamber, I just first want to say thank you for your public service. I have a deep appreciation for the role that you play, and I will just say now in my position, having been elected in November as state representative, my lens when I think about local government is how can I be a partner to address some of these very issues that the community and you all have been speaking to tonight. So I was elected in November. I am state representative for a new House district, so obviously the city of Traverse City, my hometown, but also just because these are invisible lines that we don't always think about, I'll briefly mention what the 103rd State House District encompasses. It's one of 110 House districts, and it includes the city of Traverse City and the immediately surrounding townships in Grand Traverse County. The county was split in half, and the rest of the district, or the county, is represented by my colleague, Representative John Roth. And then I also have all of Leelanau County and 2 townships in Benzie County. We are also privileged to have the site of Tribal Nation Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians, which is in the district, or rather we overlap with the tribe. So what I've been trying to do at the end of my first year in office was come around to all 3 counties as well as to the city of Traverse City to give you sort of an update of some of the work that I've been able to be a part of in the state legislature. I'm not going to make it comprehensive, I promise. We passed a couple hundred bills, but I wanted to highlight a few things that frankly don't always make the headlines, but I think they're relevant to the city of Traverse City and our residents. So first of all, I am proud to say, as I said, we passed several hundred bills. Over 150 of them were bipartisan bills, and I will mention some of those bills as we go. I think that's how it should work. We are back in session. I'm actually driving down early tomorrow morning. Got committee and session tomorrow and for the rest of this week. And also proud to say my first 3 bills that were signed into law, 2 of them actually have to do with protecting survivors of abuse. One expands state law. I mentioned our tribal nations, Grand Traverse Band. This one had the tribe's support, but our 12 federally recognized tribes were left out of state statute in this and many other cases historically, so this was addressing that omission by expanding funding through DHHS for sexual and domestic violence resources to include explicitly that tribal programming can receive that funding. That's, again, it was an oversight. I will say, and I want to acknowledge and appreciate that the tribes were already allowing and extending that to non-tribal members, despite the state not acknowledging the tribes providing those services. And I'll also say that in rural areas, sometimes the tribal programming is all there is. And so just a lot of appreciation to our 12 federally recognized tribes for always offering it to tribal and non-tribal members, but now we have explicitly, through the bill that I sponsored and was signed into law, making sure that that funding is available to the tribes. So the next one actually has to do, shockingly, Michigan until 2023 allowed child marriage. And over 20,000, mostly young girls, had been victims of child marriage. So my bill was part of a package that banned child marriage, so we caught up to the 21st century in Michigan, and was proud to be a part of that effort. My third bill that was signed into law actually specifically sort of speaks to youth civic participation. It makes me proud of my city to see a full room of active citizens, but that starts young. And my bill was signed into law. It follows the suit of over a dozen other states that have expanded voter pre-registration to 16 and 17-year-olds. Now, they can't vote constitutionally until they're 18, so I want to make that very clear. But think about when you were in high school. You're getting your driver's license, you're taking AP Gov, you're frankly becoming much more aware of the greater world that you are about to become an adult in. And that is a great opportunity to get young people into the pipeline, get them already pre-registered to vote, so when they turn 18 and there's a lot going on in their life, that they're already ready to go. And statistically, in the states that have allowed 16-year-olds to pre-register, there are a couple percentage points increase in youth voting participation and that starts them as a lifelong voter. So I was proud to have each of those 3 bills signed into law. So I also want to just make a quick nod to some of the work that the legislature was able to do this year, and appreciation to the city of Traverse City. I've been proud as a city resident that we've always tried to be champions on being an inclusive city, particularly as it pertains to LGBTQ rights. And so one of the things we were able to do in the legislature this year, and this was a bipartisan vote, was expand the Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act to make it explicitly prohibited to discriminate against LGBTQ members of the community in housing and employment. So we finally got that done, and again, proud that that was bipartisan. We also were able to vote to ban conversion therapy, which is a very harmful practice that particularly makes it difficult for young people in the LGBTQ community. All right, so that's a couple of quick highlights of some bills. It was mentioned earlier by the chief. I appreciated his kind comments, but budget items that we were able to get this year, 2023, last year. You're obviously aware of the $1.8 million that we were able to get for the 100-foot ladder truck. Really excited about that. I told the chief I can't help with the supply chain issues, but at least we could bring some money home. And I actually just confirmed with my staff, all the paperwork is in, we're ready to go, and really appreciate the partnership with the chief. Also, there was a $200,500 budget allocation to replace the obsolete restrooms there, sort of West End Beach down towards the end, and replace those with universal accessible restrooms that will improve the experience for our local residents and visitors along the Tart Trail and our beautiful lake shore. Others that were specifically for the city of Traverse City, we were able to secure $2 million for the city. I remember talking to Art, was that this summer, about the lead water line replacement program. And I will note, Madam Mayor, that you were asking me, the Biden administration is telling local communities that that is a mandate, that they want to replace those for the safety of our residents. And that was a way that we could help at the state level to secure some of the funding that would be necessary to meet that mandate and help with public safety and water. And a couple that are not directly for sort of the city itself, but I think are important because they address needs that I continually hear from city and regional residents: childcare and housing. Lots to talk about housing tonight. I wanted to make sure that you were aware, and please feel free to follow up with me after. I asked the police chief to pass around my card, so you have that if you need it. I was able to get $800,000 into the budget that goes to all 3 counties in the district. The Leelanau Early Childhood Development Commission applied for this funding, and they asked for a smaller amount. This was former Commissioner Patricia Sudas-Little, who Chet knows very well. She's a mover and a shaker. But I asked her if she would expand the child care funds, and this is for tuition assistance as well as helping small business child care startups. If she could expand it to administer the program for all 3 counties, I would advocate for more funding. And she agreed to that, so we got $800,000 instead of the smaller amount she asked for. So if there are folks in the audience or on the city commission who know folks who would like to know more about that, see me after or reach out to me. Happy to connect you with Patricia. And then $300,000 for Housing North, and that is to assist local communities. Obviously, the city of Traverse City has staff and are working on your housing issue, but many of our smaller townships in my district don't have the staff, the full-time folks, the technical support to navigate state and federal funds. If they do want to make zoning changes, I know that's a hot topic, but Housing North has a program with staff with that training, and with the $300,000, they're deploying those staff into those 3 counties in my district. All right, and then lastly, for budget, NMC and Michigan Tech and 20 Fathoms The chamber and a couple of other partners came to me with an ask for $15 million to help build the Freshwater Research Innovation Center, which will be at the Discovery Pier. And this is something I will give definitely appreciation and credit to my Republican Senator counterpart, John DeMoose. We worked very closely together to advocate and got that $15 million in the budget. That one was important to me because it should bring a couple hundred well-paying jobs. And that's another really important issue for our region. So hopefully you noticed this, but when I thought about budget asks, there are so many great things that folks asked for, but I really tried to look at it through the lens of how do we serve the region as a whole as best as I can with the funds, and then what have I heard most repeatedly on 45,000 or so doors that we knocked in 2022 and my 4 years sitting in your seats on the county commission. So housing, childcare, public safety, infrastructure, and good jobs. All right, so I don't know how long I'm taking here, but I'll try to keep it moving. But it's a whole year's worth of work, so I got a little bit to tell you. So I was proud to also get, very briefly, TCAPS and all of our large rural school districts have had a historic inequity in funding for our transportation. This directly affects every child who goes to TCAPS, Benzie Central, the Leelanau schools, because for my entire adult life, there was no equity in the formula from the state when it came to funding busing. And we have downstate schools that it's, a few miles square radius for their entire district. TCAPS is a couple hundred. Kalkaska County, where I grew up, is 400 square miles. When I was in high school, Kalkaska County literally closed their school down early because they ran out of money. And when they reopened, in order to make payroll and keep the doors open, they cut busing. And that meant all those families had to figure it out on their own. So there's always been sort of talked about this inequity that we needed to address, and that just never really happened. I'm incredibly proud to tell you, in my first 6 months on the job, navigating the budget process with some really helpful support from the budget chairs, who are both former public school teachers, we were able to get a new equity formula into the budget so that our school districts will receive significantly more funding. And that means more money for college prep classes, more money for field trips, more money for mental health FTEs to support our kids. Because kids, no matter whether you grew up in Kalkaska County or Detroit or Grand Rapids, we should be investing in all of our kids' education. So really proud to have gotten that budget win. And it was $150 million put into the budget towards that for this year. All right, so a couple other quick things. I'm going to speak briefly to housing and mental health. Some of the progress we've been able to make, when I sat in those seats, I was frustrated that the county's brownfield redevelopment fund was restricted by state statute. We could not address housing with those funds. And so I'm on the Economic Development and Small Business Committee. That a bill came through our committee, and again, it passed with bipartisan support, and it has passed through the House and the Senate and has become law, which expands brownfield funds to allow local communities to utilize it for housing. Now note, I said allow, I did not say require. I see this as the state should be putting more tools on the table for local communities, from Marquette to Benton Harbor, right, in having more tools available to you all to address our housing needs as makes sense for the local community. So hopefully you're already aware of that, but that was something I was really excited to support. Another bill that's in the works, it made it through the Senate, it made it through my Economic Development and Small Business Committee in the House, got real close in November on the full House floor, but didn't quite make it over the finish line. So I'm hoping, we're currently tied at 54-54. This seems like it would be a great bipartisan bill for us to support this spring. Something called a missing middle housing bill. Now, first of all, what's the missing middle? 120% of area median income. But I always like to tell people, I was at a coffee hour recently and I had a woman raise her hand and say, I'm the missing middle. I said, okay, tell me more. She said, I'm a nurse. My husband's a nurse. Missing middle are teachers. They're firefighters. They're first responders. And we know in this region, they are really being priced out of their ability to exist in our communities. And so this missing middle bill, broadly, it would expand the Housing Community Development Fund through MSHDA and allow more flexibility to utilize those funds to build missing middle housing. Another piece of it that I think is really important, in terms of the state being a partner and not being restrictive for local communities. This missing middle bill also makes a change. Current requirement is that missing middle funding, if it's utilized, the housing has to be built in a downtown area or physically contiguous to a downtown area. Now think about Northern Michigan, think about our communities. That is far too restrictive. So what I like, another thing I like about the missing middle bill is it decouples that and it gives smaller, more rural communities more flexibility to build where it makes sense and have access to those funds. All right, almost done. Mental health. Mental health is very tied to a lot of what I frankly have been hearing in this room tonight. Stable housing, access to mental health care, some of those are very tied together when it comes to especially folks experiencing homelessness. And we want to be getting more resources for our neighbors who need access to mental health care. So a couple things we were able to do already. We have voted to put $300 million additional into the school aid fund budget to allow an increase in mental health FTEs for our youth. We know that we're hearing that from our communities. Young people went through a really disruptive experience with the pandemic. We need to be getting more resources into the schools to support our kids. The first unanimous House of Representatives vote of all 110 members happened when we voted to cut the time in half for licensing for out-of-state teachers and social workers to be able to actually become licensed and begin to practice in schools in Michigan. It was the first, I'll tell you the whole story some other time. It was actually kind of fun. There was some positive peer pressure that occurred. 2 members who always vote no to everything actually switched their vote and voted yes right in the middle of the process. But we are really trying to put more tools on the table again for our local communities to address mental health. We also were able to vote to keep telehealth insurance. There's a requirement that they cover behavioral health visits that was put into place during the pandemic. It was about to sunset. We actually voted in Michigan to keep it permanent so that that access to telehealth for mental health and other forms, I see you nodding, it's a really important tool. It used to be, 2 or 3% of patients would utilize telehealth. Now I think it's over 40%. And when you think about in a rural context, access to transportation, these are ways for us to keep that accessible and make it so providers can actually get paid a fair rate for providing that care. All right. So lastly, I'll just briefly talk about in-district engagement by the numbers. I always say Lansing is a bubble. It feels very far away from my district sometimes, so it's very important to me to stay engaged with the district. So we were able in our first year to do 30 coffee hours. I did 3 a month, 1 in each county. We did 3 town halls. I have 2 staff in Lansing, and I could not do any of this without them. We fielded over 17,000 calls and emails in the first year. We have a very engaged district, which I much appreciate, and it helps keep me on track with whether I'm working on what I'm hearing is important to the district. I have an in-district liaison, Renee McCauley, who used to be the United Way executive director, deeply knowledgeable in the community, and she is here in the district attending things that I cannot attend when I'm in session in Lansing. And then this summer, we had a community survey. I passed something around, a piece of paper with, there's a little community survey on the back. There's a QR code if you prefer to do it digitally. But we got to 6,000 legislative doors with that survey this summer and about 2,000 calls. And again, it's incredibly important to me to be checking in and making sure I'm hearing from folks and what I'm working on reflects what I'm hearing in my district. So, trying to talk fast, I'm done. Lastly, please don't hesitate to reach out. This should be an active partnership. So I am very available. I'm happy to meet with you if any or all of you would like to sit down. And thank you again for your leadership. Thank you for having me. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
I think we're all digesting all the great news that we've got here. I would just like to comment that sometimes up here at the commission level, we do say, we'll be talking about people asking, why can't we do something? Or how do we stop something that's going through? Or how do we help something that's going through? And we always say, got to talk to Lansing. So it's nice to have our representative here to put a face to that and to give us an update on the progress that we've made, because it can trickle in. So we very much appreciate that.
Absolutely. Please do call my office and just know that those 16,000 or so calls and emails, I try to see as many of those and be a part of crafting the responses that you get as possible. And it really does help us kind of stay hopefully on track. But yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. It might take a minute, and please be patient with my staff. They're rock stars. I couldn't do it without them.
Thank you so much, Representative Kofia. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for taking this into the 2024 to amend our, or to work with our schedule. We appreciate it. And I know Representative Kofia mentioned the civic engagement and youth participation. I know we've got a few students here who came up the stairwell with me waiting for their civic requirement. And just wanted to let you know we're on the home stretch here. We'll be moving on to appointments. And this is kind of the tail end of our agenda. So hold tight just a little bit longer. Hopefully you're getting something out of this experience. So first we'll move on to appointments. Sorry, now my computer is taking a second to load. The first is Planning Commission appointments. This was myself, Commissioner Warner, and Commissioner Treadwell. We did have 2 days worth of interviews. We had a block of a few hours and realized a couple people who couldn't make it, which people that we wanted to talk to, so we scheduled a second round. So we thank the planning commissioners that are and Mr. Winter for being patient with us as we went through that process, but we wanted to make sure that we interviewed everybody that we possibly could.
We can wait until there's a motion.
Okay, and so with that, we've got a few recommendations here, so if somebody would like to make the motion, we can move forward.
I'll just say that I was part of the ad hoc. Questions have been raised about my connections to multiple applicants, so I will be recusing myself from the vote. It is a mayoral appointment, and I'm not the mayor.
Fair enough. So thank you for that and for using your best judgment there, Commissioner Treadwell. And so moving forward, we'll take a motion.
I'll make the motion that the mayoral appointment of Brian McGillivary and Shay O'Brien to the terms expiring November 9, 2026 on the Planning Commission, seats previously held by Heather Shaw and Christopher Martin, and mayoral appointment of Jessica Heller to the term expiring November 10, 2025 on the Planning Commission, seat previously held by David Hassing, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Shamrow, Commissioner Warner, and Commissioner Treadwell, be approved.
And with that disruption, I just usually open it up to my fellow ad hoc if you wanted to add anything that I didn't add.
Just that all the candidates, in my mind, and I think it was consensus of the ad hoc, were exceptional candidates, and all are more than qualified to serve on the Planning Commission. So it's a tough decision to make, and I know that folks get frustrated because they interview over and over again. I myself, and probably some of the others up here, went through that process ourselves, and in the past, that doesn't make it any easier or justify it, but there are only so many openings, and as been mentioned and heard this evening, we have a very engaged public, and that's a great thing. It's a good problem to have.
Yes, I believe one of our applicants we figured out had been applying for about 5 years, and others were newer, and so we went for a little bit of variation of experience and background. So with that.
We have a second on that motion?
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say thank you, Commissioner Wilson. It's getting late enough in the night. So with that, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Do we have to go? Oh, he heard it, I think. Okay, and as everybody might remember from December and even our earlier meetings, we've been cranking out the ad hocs. So moving on now to the Brown Bridge Advisory. This was Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Commissioner Stanley, and Commissioner Treadwell to make some appointments to the Brown Bridge. Does somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that the appointment of Rebecca Milliken to the term expiring October 5th, 2026 on the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, seat previously held by Rebecca Milliken. And Seth Stein is appointed to the term expiring October 5, 2026 on the Brown Bridge Advisory Committee, seat previously held by Edward Fleece, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Pro Tem Wilson, Commissioner Stanley, and Commissioner Treadwell, be approved.
Support.
Okay, motion by Wilson, second by Stanley. Any comments on this? Any comments from the public? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, moving on to the human rights appointments. I didn't realize it till midway through, but I was very honored to serve on both Commissioner Anderson and Shaw's first ad hoc with them on this one. And I think we had some good interviews, as was mentioned though at the head of or at the top of the meeting. We are looking for some more of a city resident to help fill a still vacant seat, but we did interview some people and find some appropriate nominees to put forward here. And thank you. This is one that allows for the county, so we do get a lot of interest from people who are in the county, but this time the spaces are limited, so we think that people from everywhere in the community that wanted to be involved on this one. So with that, I'll take a motion.
I move that the mayoral appointments of Corey Winfield, Kim Bratton, and Merrick Roman to 3-year terms expiring June 30th, 2026 on the Human Rights Commission to the seats previously held by Corey Winfield, Mary Jo Zazueta, and Jessica Forster, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Shamrow, Commissioner Shaw, and Commissioner Anderson, be approved.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw and Anderson. Any further discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. We'll move on to the Housing Commission ad hoc. This was a little bit ago. This was myself, Commissioner Stanley, and Commissioner Treadwell. In this case, we had Wayne Workman, who's been a board member, apply, and he was our sole applicant, but we did have a good discussion with him. So I would take a motion here.
I'll make a motion that the mayoral appointment of Wayne Workman for appointment to the Housing Commission for the term expiring November 30th, 2028, seat previously held by Wayne Workman, as recommended by the ad hoc committee consisting of Mayor Shamrow, Commissioner Stanley, and Commissioner Treadwell, be approved.
Support.
Thank you, Commissioner Stanley and Commissioner Treadwell. Any further discussion? Public comment? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And none. And moving on to the mouthful that is the Development Area Citizens Council ad hoc, and this was a joint ad hoc of the DDA and City Commission, and the City Commissioners of Mai Stanley, Mitch Treadwell, and Jackie Anderson served to create this, or put the recommendations forward. A discussion we did have during the last DDA meeting was the goal was to get 9 of these. The number of residents that actually live in the district are 100. So I think actually for proportionality, this might be one of the highest represented appointments, but this work was done. If anybody would like to make the motion, or if anybody from the interview had any other comments they wanted to make.
I would just like to say that there was an opportunity for Mr. Healy to be interviewed by the ad hoc prior to the January 6th meeting that happened today at 4 p.m. I don't know if procedurally that is enough time before the meeting for that appointment to be included as well.
It is, and it was mentioned in the cover or the communication in your packet that that was taking place and that that was a possibility.
Okay, so if somebody would like to make the motion that would include, I'm sorry, the gentleman's name?
Tim Healy.
Tim Healy. That can be added to the other applicants if that would clear the process today.
I'll make a recommendation that the Moving Downtown Forward TIF Development Area Citizen Council be established with the committee to deliver its report and recommendations to the City Commission, and further, that Anna DeTuri, Edward Sands, Michael Brunton, Deborah Brunton, Charles Meek, John Schoolman, Nick Riston, Ulrich Binkert, and Tim Healy be appointed to serve upon such committee with terms expiring on December 31st, 2024, and that the Downtown Development Authority provide all staff services to the committee.
Thank you, Commissioner Treadwell. Do we have a second? Okay, so Treadwell and second by Stanley. Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, is it proper to ask why Commissioner Anderson opposed this recommendation?
Yes.
I had a concern about a connection between the city on a business dealing between the city and one of the applicants, and I was concerned about the appearance of conflict and or a quid pro quo.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Stanley.
I would like to ask the city attorney to speak to the discussion that ensued, because we did consult the city attorney regarding that concern.
Sure. So, excuse me. So any conflict analysis lies with the individual commissioner or, the person that could have the conflict. So ultimately, it would be up to that person to identify whether they have a conflict and then make that decision and that disclosure, follow through that process. In this case, the purpose of the committee that's being formed is an advisory board to provide input on the plan to this body and the DDA, and their perspective is specifically sought out because they live within the district. And so it is required for all of the folks on this committee, appointed to this committee, to be living in the district, and then their purpose and capacity is to give feedback in an advisory capacity to the other boards. So that being said, anybody in this district is going to have some connection to the district, and that's the purpose of it. The specific individual that Commissioner Anderson had a question about was involved in one of the pilot matters, and that doesn't necessarily create a conflict. There's no contract being sought as a result of this process. There's no financial gain as a result of this advisory process to that individual. The appearance of a conflict I guess you could talk about that for a long time. That's more of it's an in-between. It's less of a black and white conflict analysis. But again, it would be up to that person to bring that forth and disclose that and make that choice. And that being the case, the connection to the pilot process is not necessarily connected to the TIF and the DDA plan process. So that would be a pretty remote connection in that conflict analysis.
And I would just like to add that there was substantial conversation among the committee that was examining the advisory committee capacity versus an executive committee with spending authority or the ability to execute contracts or something of that nature. Given that this is an advisory committee, that was part of the calculus in the
Precisely.
discussion.
Great. Mr. Warner?
Yeah, I'll be voting against this, and you can refer back to my comments earlier this evening as to largely why is the timing. I have nothing against any of the recommended applicants. I have nothing against the ad hoc committee. It really is just the timing, because by moving this forward, we're saying essentially, yes, let's move quickly, expeditiously to get TIF 97 extended, and I think that's counter to the conversations going on by the citizenry. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other public comment?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jean Dorenzi. I'm the CEO of the Traverse City Downtown Development Authority, and just want to identify of the long process that we have been in on the TIF 97 amendment process. This started for the amended plan over a year ago, and this is the process, and we will continue with public engagement and have had public engagement, and will continue to do public outreach for this before it comes back to you and to the DDA board, and the Development Area Citizens Council is part of that public process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Shaw,
Aye.
Commissioner Stanley,
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
and Mayor Shamrow.
Yes. Okay, thank you, that passes. And moving on to another DDA related, we've had some life changes in some of the DDA members and some resignations here. So we will be grateful for service, but unfortunately accepting the resignation of Pam Marsh, Michael Brodsky, and Pam DeMerrill, and the establishment of an ad hoc to replace those members on the commission, on the board, sorry. I'll take a motion, or anybody has any questions?
I'll make the motion that the resignation of Pam Marsh, effective November 27th, 2023, Pam DeMerrill, effective January 1st, 2024, and Michael Brodsky, effective February 1st, 2024, from the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors be accepted, and further, that an ad hoc interview committee be established to make recommendation regarding 3 mayoral appointments to the Downtown Development Authority Board of Directors with terms expiring September 15th, 2024, for the seat previously held by Pam Marsh and Michael Brodsky, and this term expiring September 15th, 2025, for the seat previously held by Pam DeMerrill, and that Mayor Shamro, Commissioner Shaw, and Commissioner Treadwell be appointed to such committee with Mayor Shamro as chair.
Support.
Okay. Motion by Stanley, second by Treadwell. Any comment? Any public comment on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you for that. And the final home stretch here, we've got our reports and correspondence in the packet. So I will move on. Is there any general public comment? This can be about anything at all, whether it was on the agenda tonight or not. Nope, there you go, you guys got beat. And sorry about the mic, it looks like everybody's gonna kind of have to hold it.
Okay. Do you want to use this instead?
Sure.
Might be a little easier. There you go. You bet.
So my name is Veruca Mamula. I'm a resident of Barlow Street, and I am part of a group of a lot of people here tonight. We're a grassroots organization that are taking action to call for a ceasefire in Gaza right now. And you were presented, both the Human Rights Commission and the City Commission, with a resolution to call for a ceasefire. Other cities in Michigan have done it, and we haven't heard anything in response. We are just checking in on the progress of that and if there's anything that we can do to help move that along.
We don't usually engage in public comment back and forth, but I just wanted to let you know it is with the Human Rights Commission, and that is the first step. So that is proceeding. Thank you.
And would you mind, just for the record, could you spell your first and last name for me, if you don't mind?
Yeah. It's a Veruca and then Mamula.
Thank you. You can just give it to him.
It's going to
Thank
be
you.
a baton here.
There you go.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeff Erickson, and I'm a resident of the Slabtown neighborhood at 1214 West Front Street. I'm a husband and father of 2 girls under the age of 5 years old. And our family, as I mentioned, lives in Slabtown on the north side of West Front Street in one of those newer 3 identical white-looking homes that I'm sure you all recognize as you head outside, heading west of town. I want to first thank all the city commissioners tonight for your role in helping make Traverse City a great place to live and continue to make it a safe place to live as well. But let me explain why I'm here tonight, though. In the early morning of Thursday, December 21st, a vehicle driven by 2 teenagers heading northeast into town on West Front Street drove wildly down the hill, jumped the curb, crashed through our fence into our backyard, eventually colliding into our deck, stopping only feet from our home. The vehicle was traveling in excess of the speed limit, and the driver was then taken quickly into law enforcement for what we think to be a DWI. No one was hurt, thank God, but had this occurred during the day, either my family, our neighbors, my kids, or any residents could have been obviously seriously injured. Currently, there are no safety barriers such as a median, a guardrail, jersey barriers, or some form of bollards in this West Front Street corridor. This bend in the road has now been the site of 4 crashes in 4 years, although neighbors confirm additional crashes prior to when we moved in 2020. In 3 other instances, though, drivers have lost control of their vehicle, landing themselves either in Kids Creek or in our neighbor's yard, each time demolishing TC Power and Light property in the process. It is safe to say that this will continue to happen, as it's happened 1 time every year in the last 3 years, or 4 years now. It is clearly a safety risk for anyone as cars head northeast into town in this downhill stretch on West Front Street. I've been engaging with the Streets Division and the City Engineering team so far, who've been very receptive to this issue, to ask for their professional assessment and their recommendation to improve the safety in this corridor. It is my absolute amateur recommendation, although my dad is a civil engineer for the record, to that we either install a guardrail or a median, as well as revisit the posted speed limit signs. And so I'm only here tonight to ask for your eventual support that when an appropriate recommendation reaches this commission, you consider it thoroughly. As a private property owner, I have very few remedies at my disposal to ultimately prevent this from occurring. So I speak on behalf of my neighbors along West Front Street, respectfully asking that the City Commission address this very dangerous corridor. Given that it is my family's safety that I put ahead of all other things in my life, I look forward to working collaboratively with the city to find a solution that enhances safety on Front Street residents and for the drivers of vehicles in this area as well. Thank you for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you for that. And just to let you know, as was mentioned, I know you've been in communication with the city engineer and others, and that is moving forward in the process. So we will likely be hearing something about that soon with their professional recommendations.
Hello, good to be here. My name is Dan Worth. I'm from Cedar out in Leelanau, but into Traverse quite a bit. And I'm here to talk a little bit tonight about climate change and clean energy progress. I keep pushing it at every meeting, and I still will. I'm thrilled to see new city manager. It's wonderful to have you here. It was great to talk to you that interview night. So much great work that can happen now. I know the sustainability coordinator is being hired to push things forward, which is another fantastic step. And I want to thank Mayor Shamrow and Commissioner Werner for their work with TCLP and also with the city pushing things forward for many years now. I handed this out right before. If you guys can all take a look at it whenever you can. I'm going to start with the gloom and doom, which is, first of all, last year was the first year that global average temperatures rose above 1.5 degrees Celsius, above the global average. That was sort of a red warning line that we just crossed. So that's scary. And then another from the U.S. National Climate Assessment that extreme weather events are costing an estimated $150 billion each year. And so there's the gloom and doom. But mostly what I want to talk about is the tremendous economic opportunity in front of you all and in front of this city and the community. And I put on this paper a wonderful campaign that Ann Arbor has run called A to Zero. It isn't just about city buildings, it's about the community. As you can see, 75 nonprofits, 40 businesses, 16 agencies and public groups, on and on, 8 student groups are involved in pushing things forward. Economic returns are already coming in. $14 million received in external funding. Annual climate millage the city passed. I encourage folks here to do the same. Residents saving on solar. Last year they set a record with 232 new installations. We can get there, and the woman running this came to us 7 years ago and said, how is Traverse City doing such wonderful work and being on the cutting edge? Can you help us? Now they've sort of leapfrogged in a lot of ways. And I spoke with her before this. She's going to be up here in February, probably right around when the next, or not the next, but the second February meeting is for the City Commission. And I would love to have you guys put her on the agenda to talk to you. She'll be up here. If the timing doesn't quite work, she's willing to Zoom. But there's tremendous opportunity in front of us, and there's state and federal dollars flowing and about to flow. Representative Kofia, I know the clean energy work that the state's doing is tremendous. I think if we got our act together and got some shovel-ready stuff going, we could be in a position for a lot of money that would last for a long time here to fulfill a lot of needs in mobility, power, efficiency, buildings that we want to do anyway. So thank you all for your work. I'm going to keep bugging you, but I really appreciate the work you all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
To the next speaker, thank you.
Hi, my name's Nico Lenz. I'm a resident of 8th Street in Traverse City. And I don't know if this is on.
Something happened.
Oh, shoot. Okay, my bad. Okay, it's on now.
There you go.
I just also want to come up here and talk about the ceasefire resolution that we have put out. As we speak right now, the last hospital in Gaza, the very last one in the Strip, is being carpet bombed around it. And there are 6 ambulances, and we're looking at thousands of people who have nothing to do, nowhere to go, nobody defending them. It just really makes me wonder, you know, other cities have passed a ceasefire resolution. And then I just saw that the Senate had a resolution that they were voting on, but they tabled, much like I feel like what's going to happen here is going to be, it will be people dragging their feet until it's safe to really come out and say something and do something. And I'm just kind of, I feel like maybe this is what happened, I don't know, during the civil rights movement here or during slavery rights. Where was the city? What were they doing? Were they saying it's not a local issue until the Civil War broke out? Then were they having something to say? I just think that at this point, the very least we can do is say something. I don't hear anyone talking about it. It's the greatest humanitarian crisis. And I think that saying something, doing something quickly, very quickly, is the least we can do. I know that it seems like the smallest thing, a city calling for a city resolution. What does it really do? But it's better than nothing at this point. So thank you for your time. And another thing is like all these issues we have with transportation, housing, all could be solved very simply if we just put the money that we are putting towards Israel and putting it in our communities instead. It's work smarter, not harder. We just need to stop funding Israel and funding what's happening, and we can put that towards each other, because I think everyone here really can agree. We really care about each other, and yeah, that's really all I got to say. Some of our community members are Palestinians, and they've gotten hate threats, so it is a local issue no matter what.
Thank you, Nico. Any other public comment? Thank you. Okay, seeing none, I think. Sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry, we had somebody come in and we were making sure for those off camera that we didn't have another public comment. It looks like that has ended our public comment. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. Any final words from our commissioners? Yes, please.
Sorry,
sorry.
Yeah, I told somebody that I was going to speak tonight, and so I guess I'm holding myself accountable because I said I would, even though I was getting cold feet and still have cold feet. So our meeting is tonight, not last night, and yet we haven't mentioned anything about why it's tonight and not last night. And that's not, I'm not poking at anybody. In fact, my comments here are about me. They're not about this body or anybody else in the city. But I had the opportunity over the weekend to listen to MLK speeches, to read letters, and read sermons. And what has stood out to me, so again, just to me, is justice. And we start every meeting with a pledge, and we say, "And justice for all." And that's really big, and we never really think about it, but justice for all is overwhelming, easily overwhelming. And certainly as individuals, we all probably try to live up to some standard about justice for all. But as an elected person, I feel a broader responsibility as far as what does that mean and who gets justice and what, through what? Through our actions, through what we decide to prioritize to spend time on, through how we approve a budget, what goes into the budget. And to me, maybe in doing those readings and listening to original recordings, what some of the things that stand out and that hit me hard is the proactive nature, not the passive nature of justice, especially, again, as an elected official. And, words of the fierce urgency of now, and that the time is always right to do what is right, and referencing the overfed mouths of the middle and upper classes. On a positive note, and very specific in MLK's words to justice. He has power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love.
Thank you, Commissioner Warner. I did not mention at the top, and I had some words, but yours are far more eloquent and more and appreciated. So I thank you for making that speech tonight. And with that, and with again appreciation and thanks for our new city manager, Liz Vogel, and all of us, everyone who joined us here tonight to speak and be part of our process. We're grateful for you, and we're grateful to live in the city where we have people who care in every way imaginable. So with that, I bid you all a good week. We'll adjourn this meeting and be kind.
I got 4 done.
What's the